The Monster of Gotham. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151, Eternal Sleep. 1. An unexpected visitor, a white coat, thick glasses, a faint confident smile on his face. Every time I see you, are you sleeping? Professor Connors, long time no see. Lizu sat up from the rocking chair, and his eyes naturally noticed Professor Connors' two arms. The drug looks good. Lizu stared at Professor Connors' arms. Does it work well during strenuous exercise? He clenched his fists and made teasing movements back and forth. Preliminary research results, but the body cells are still unstable. Professor Connors looked at his arms, as if appreciating a work of art. But I didn't come here this time for this. Your toy store? The professor's eyes swept across the toy shelves. The gals with interlaced animal teeth, the deep divers with human-shaped fins and webbed feet, and the eagle girl with wings spread and laughing wildly. Especially when seeing the eagle girl, Professor Connors remembered the figure lying on the cabin in the dream. His expression changed slightly. And with his understanding of Lizu's ability, these things could never be ordinary toys. Perhaps each one is alive. How terrifying it would be if all these terrifying forms woke up from their toy states. Professor Connors moistened his lips with saliva. I need your help, Lee. Do you expect me to be like those guys who wear their underwear outside, or like the Tin Man who flies in the sky every day? Man, I'm a bad guy, the kind who kills people. Professor Connors was silent for a while before continuing. Dream. Lizu became interested. Professor Connors said, isn't that your forte? Lizu shrugged and motioned Professor Connors to continue. Professor Connors knew that his words had aroused some interest in the other party. Some of my researcher friends have been having nightmares recently. Nightmares? That must be very interesting. Harley Quinn interrupted. I often have nightmares. Sometimes my head will be chopped off. Sometimes I will be chased by a group of hyenas. Haha, very interesting. No, not just nightmares. They are having the same dream. Professor Connors looked at Lizu. You must be able to solve it, right? The same dream connected by multiple people. Lizu smiled. I never hesitate to help my friends. This is where we will meet tonight. Now I still need to deal with some things. Professor Connors handed over a note. You also know that we can't act during the day. Professor Connors meant something. It is outrageous that Lizu, who robbed a bank, actually opened a toy store, so some things are better done at night. At least it can gradually reduce the attention of some people. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for your patronage. The mechanical sound of toys sent Professor Connors away. Pudding. Harley Quinn tilted her head and looked at Lizu. I'm going out tonight. You can go out for a walk too. Are you buying goods? No, of course not. Lizu's sight seemed to pass through the wall and saw the back of Professor Connors, who was leaving. Go bury some things. We can't always play the story of crying wolf. He didn't think that Professor Connors' sudden visit to him was related to the so-called nightmare, at least not the fundamental reason. At night, the neon lights were on. At the door of Odinberger, a dispute was going on in a white Cadillac. Don't bring food to my car. This is an alligator leather seat. The car door opened, and the green leather shoes stepped into the car first. The owner of the car used the headlights inside the car to see who got in the car. Professor Connors, the helper you mentioned is a robber? He raised his voice a lot. Professor Connors, who was sitting in the co-pilot seat, didn't care about the other party's dissatisfaction and introduced to Lizu after he got in the car. This is Dr. Skedden, an expert in sleep research. Lizu only cared about the burger in his hand and said HMM. It is said that this robber robbed the bank's vault and then disappeared. Professor Connors, you have enough funds to conduct research. Dr. Skedden reminded. Study sleep? What is that? Lizu was not interested in the doctor's weird tone, but he was very interested in his work. Sleep is the process of the brain excreting toxins through the lymphatic system. I study toxin load, protein activation and lymphatic circulation in the sleep state. You won't understand, even if I tell you. Dr. Skedden seemed to be completely unafraid of Lizu's identity as a robber. He held the steering wheel and drove through the neon-lit streets. No matter why Professor Connors identified you, I don't think a robber can be related to this matter. What cycle? I really don't understand. Lizu finished his hamburger and threw the paper bag out of the window, but when it comes to dreaming, I'm definitely an expert. The car stopped in front of an abandoned school dormitory building. Professor Connors received a call and left, so only Lizu and Dr. Skedden arrived at the destination. We are here. Although Dr. Skedden did not believe that Lizu had the ability to solve the problem, he still brought Lizu over. Do those researchers usually live here? Lizu looked up at the broken building, from the broken bricks to the unrepaired windows. The house belongs to the school. It's good to have some use. This is not Professor Connors' laboratory, but the birthplace of all nightmares. Skedden took the key and opened the door. Before all this happens, we will let the patients live here. The room was full of beds and very crowded. There were strange smells mixed, but there was definitely little smell of disinfectant, all of which were the smell of human body fluids. Pungent body fluids. We originally wanted to use chemical information to guide the physical construction of dreams. I gave the patient an forth and installed a sensor. Skedden briefly introduced it. It was obvious that Lizu was not very interested in this thing. Lizu turned his neck to observe a circle before asking, "Is there a vacant room?" "There is one, but it hasn't been cleaned for a long time." "That one." Skedden shrugged. After all, he was someone hired by Professor Connors, and he only knew that he had to absolutely obey. He took the key and led Lizu to the vacant room. In addition to the ward outside and Skeleton's study, there is only this guest room here. What are your plans? Dr. Skeleton didn't think the man in front of him would do anything. However, Lizu's answer really surprised him. Sleep. It seemed that Lizu was eager to try. That's it? I think you are crazy. I think so too. Lizu took the key and invited, "Do you want to come together? I won't sleep here. I will leave when I feel sleepy. I have a lot of things to do in my office." Skeleton refused bluntly. Sleeping in this place is absolutely crazy. He came here only because there is no other place to stay. Is anyone else coming tonight? Lizu took the key to unlock the door. No, after they bit off their fingers in their sleep and didn't wake up, I didn't dare let anyone live here. Those patients had similar reactions and had the same dreams, which was too unrealistic. Even hallucinogens would not be 100% successful. After investigating the cases, okay, Lizu interrupted his chattering. "Go to your office and don't disturb my sleep." Thank you Parksio Ranliunian for the reward of 500 starting coins. Thank you Shideo Yu for the reward of 1000 starting coins. And thank you Shuiao 201701261338143844. The reward of 100 starting coins. Chapter 152, Eternal Sleep, 2. The room was dark and damp, and very narrow. 2 beds could be placed, but there would be no place to stand. Wooden floor. Guest room might be more appropriately called confinement room. Some inhumane decorations on the wall that had not yet been removed made this narrow space look like a private torture chamber. Lizu patted the wooden floor and dusted it off. He buttoned up his suit and lay down. Falling asleep was already one of Lizu's best skills. In the haze, he heard someone mumbling. His vision began to distort. Blood. When everything in front of him became real again, it had turned into a colorful world of spores. Colorful fungi rose from the ground and grew into mushroom caps that covered the sky. Spore particles floated in the sky, like fish swimming in the air. Lizu's location had not changed. It was still the guest room, but the wood had begun to rot, and fungi grew in the cracks of the rotten wood. In the world of dreams, nothing can be predicted. Unlike the dream that Lizu had created, this place was filled with confusion, dazzling light, and countless spores and fungi. Boom! Exclamation mark. The wall shook, and the strange hands tore through the wall and grabbed Lizu. One, and another. Exclamation mark. The wall was torn to pieces, smashed, and replaced by the strange hands. This place was like hell, but the nightmare scenes that were very scary to ordinary people could not cause fear to Lizu. Compared with the mysterious and unknown things, the terrifying visual scenes seemed very cute. In dreams, there are some things that you don't have to worry about the consequences of using. Lizu's eyes flashed red, as if some crazy power in the dusty body was about to be released by him. This dream was full of crisis. He wandered in the nightmare, wandered in the strange hands, and flew in the spores. I don't know how long it took. There should be no concept of time in dreams, and the concept of space is also very weak. Boom. Lizu fell from a high altitude and hit the ground. He has returned to normal, except that the red light in his eyes has not completely faded. He came here following the whispers in the air. This space is relatively quiet, and there is no distortion. It is just a dilapidated building, and a figure is standing in front of the building. The figure has his back to Lizu, and slowly turns his head after hearing the movement. I can't sleep, and I can't wake up. The man's eyes were replaced by growing fungi, and his eyeballs seemed to have become a nursery for the growth of fungi. The mushroom caps bloomed very beautifully, which made people feel cold. I don't know if I dreamed of death, or died in a dream. Am I dead? I feel like I'm dead, but I can't control it. I'm still dreaming. Can you help me? The dream world in front of Lizu changed. After the dazzling light flashed, a huge behemoth with huge limbs and a crab-like appearance, but covered with fungi fell in front of him like a mountain. Apart from the dream, there was only a blank. He is the master of this nightmare, and in the reality outside the dream, Lizu opened his eyes. I don't like to help others. Lizu clenched his fist and smashed it on the floor. There was a crisp sound of wood breaking, and the floor was lifted up by him without any effort. His movement attracted the attention of Dr. Skedden. The doctor did not seem to go back to his office to rest, but was standing outside the door. Are you okay? He pushed the door open immediately, but saw Lizu smashing the floor. Damn, you are crazy too. He wanted to step forward to stop him, but was kicked away. His back hit the wall, and spurted out blood. He broke several ribs, and leaned against the wall, unable to move. Lizu stopped, and the things under the floor were completely exposed. A corpse covered with fungi. There were also red-eyed rats running on the corpse. Seeing people, the rats were scared and fled. He was one of the first test subjects, found from Craigslist. Skeleton struggled, holding his chest and said, his brain was infected with a deadly bacteria. I found it too late. He died in his dream. I didn't want anyone to find him, so I hid him in the floor, and I've been hiding until now. At this time, Dr. Skeleton no longer had the courage to fear nothing, or maybe it was because of the pain. Anyway, he curled up in the corner obediently. Look at him. Lizu picked up the corpse. It's unrecognizable, and even covered with spores. You are breathing the breath of nightmares. But this may not be a bad thing. The corpse slowly shrank under his palm and turned into a toy. A gorgeous toy with a crab appearance like in the dream, with all kinds of colorful fungi crawling on the shell. The source of nightmares. It is destined to play a special role in Lizu's dream, allowing many people to enter his dream at the same time. If Lizu can communicate well with the guy who is still dreaming, is this the reason? Dr. Skedden couldn't believe that the body he buried would become the trigger for everything to develop to the current situation. Compared to this, can you tell me how you contacted Professor Connors? We knew each other before and had a good relationship, and Skedden explained his relationship with Professor Connors. Lizu put away the toys, squatted in front of Dr. Skedden, and held his collar. I don't think you are a doctor. This nightmare may be a difficulty that can never be overcome for others, but it is just a small trouble for Lizu. Someone wants to trap me here. Professor Connors is a mastermind. He is so brave. Lizu threatened Keston. Do you want to taste the taste of nightmares? Constructing dreams is extremely energy consuming, but after accidentally getting new toys, combined with Lizu's ability to actively pull people into dreams, this will undoubtedly become one of the cruelest punishments in the world. In the dream, it seems that I'm in hell every moment. I'm really a doctor who studies dreams. Skeleton's voice trembled. It's just that Professor Connors heard about my situation here and took the initiative to find me. He said he could find someone to help me solve the problem here. It seems that our professor has a shameful plan. Now the only thing that can be confirmed is that the professor has made a deal with someone again, and letting Lizu suffer a little bit must be one of them. Lizu's eyes moved to Dr. Skeleton. I think you can continue to help me shine. Of course I'm willing. I will definitely serve you in the future. That's great. Lizu was delighted, and he mentioned Dr. Skelton. What do you want me to do? Skelton asked tentatively. You are an expert in studying dreams. Skelton nodded vigorously, intending to prove his value. Maybe if you lie down and are buried under the floor, you can also hatch some dream bacteria? No. Skelton's fate is already determined, and he will sleep under the floor forever. Chapter 153 Mr. Green. Lizu pushed open the door and buttoned up his suit. Walking out of the dilapidated building, there was no one on the street. On the rooftop behind him, a reptile in a white coat approached silently. Your invitation is not very good, Professor. Without looking back, Lizu revealed the identity of the monster lying on the roof. Thanks to you, Lee, I have become like this now. With a bang, it fell in front of Lizu. A huge humanoid lizard, wearing a white coat, with a tail as high as a person swinging left and right behind it. Lizard Professor, you want to kill me? Lizu asked. I can't kill you, said the Lizard Professor bluntly. He knew very well how terrible Lizu was. So you want me to die in a nightmare? Or just give me a fatal blow when I'm trapped in a nightmare? Lizu talked freely, as if it was not him who was threatened with life just now. But the Lizard Professor was unwilling to talk about this aspect. I have a friend who met a monster in an email communication. Professor Lizard walked forward, his body twisting and slowly changing back to human form, but his legs were weak, and it was difficult for him to move. There were still scales on his body, and it seemed that Professor Lizard had not yet fully grasped the changes in his body. Another friend? Lizu smiled, but he also followed Professor Lizard. Even if the other party wanted to cause trouble for him, the human body needs to continue to evolve in order to become stronger. What do you think, Lee? Forget about turning into a lizard. I hate the slippery and sticky feeling. Professor Lizard has become much more mysterious since he conducted experiments on himself. He has more friends. When the night was about to end and dawn was about to come, they finally arrived at the residence of their new friend. University? Professor Lizard led the way in front and rushed all the way to the destination, an old building for independent research. Hey, what are you doing, Professor Connors? I'm doing very important research. This is Professor Samuel Stern. The man who was testing some kind of green radioactive liquid looked at Lizu in astonishment. This is Lee. The source of my body's recovery, evolution, and even mutation lies in him. Samuel Stern shook his face with impatience, eagerly approached Lizu, and played the image of mad scientist to the fullest. I'm Samuel Stern. He wanted to shake hands, but before Lizu reached out his hand, he quickly retracted his hand and hid back. Sorry, sorry, I forgot that. If you touch it, you will turn into a Barbie doll. You couldn't kill him. Samuel Stern asked Professor Lizard. The two didn't care that Lizu was right in front of them and discussed the plan to kill him. The place you found doesn't work, Professor Lizard said bluntly. According to my research, he should be interested in dreams. The incubation of those nightmare germs is beyond my imagination. Samuel Stern stared at Lizu. How did you jump out of the nightmare? Like this. Lizu waved his hand gently. The two fell to the ground in a daze. A minute later, only Samuel Stern opened his eyes. He was sweating all over and looked at Lizu with horror. Welcome to Wake Up. No one knew what they were dreaming about. It was a simple nightmare, and scientists could not control whether they had nightmares. Let me guess, you are the professor's researcher friend. Have you been having nightmares recently? Lizu walked in front of Samuel Stern and said before he answered, from the moment you met me, you will have nightmares every day. Can you control dreams? Samuel Stern was quite interested. Lizu just smiled, but did not answer. Can you work for me? Lizu invited solemnly. He stood sideways, not completely blocking Samuel Stern's sight, so that he could see the lizard professor toy lying on the ground. In an instant, the toy lizard professor turned back to normal. He is already one of the worthless collections. Lizu nodded, confirming Samuel Stern's idea. The lizard professor has long been a toy, but Lizu allowed it to move freely outside. Samuel Stern swallowed his saliva, his Adam's apple moving. You want to kill me? Lizu asked. That's just for research. For someone as dangerous as you, we have to find a way to make you cooperate, and Samuel was a little nervous. He was wondering if he had also become a toy of the other party. No, there is no need to explain why you want to kill me. I just want to know what you can get after killing me and dissecting me, he asked with great interest. The genetic code in your body. Samuel Stern was a little excited. That is not something from this world. Aliens got, or it's a pity that the explosion lost all the data. Otherwise we would definitely make humans evolve to a higher level. That is indeed a good topic. Lizu nodded, agreeing deeply. Beep beep. At this moment, the computer received an email. Samuel Stern got up and rushed to the computer. Damn it, why did the military find him? He cursed and quickly typed on the keyboard in response. Mr. Green. Lizu looked at the email with interest. He had noticed the green blood in this small laboratory. Lizard blood is not green. There is only one thing with green blood in this world, and it is related to Samuel Stern, one of the big bosses of the villains in the Marvel world. He was irradiated by gamma rays, and many unknown mutations occurred in his body. Samuel Stern replied, he has reached a fork in the evolutionary road, and he is far from being comparable to you. When it comes to evolution, Samuel Stern's eyes are full of aggression, and his words are full of disgust for Mr. Green. As a perfect research product, the appearance of Lizu made him change his goal. Mr. Green became something that he had no taste for, and a pity to throw away. Let him come. What? Isn't he being hunted by the military? There is no need to alert the military with our research. We just need to calm down and quietly study your body, quietly evolve, and when we step onto the world stage, we will definitely shock the whole world. Lizu picked his ears impatiently and swung the gun against Samuel Stern's temple, which successfully suppressed Samuel's rebuttal. Let him come and tell him that you have found a way to restrain his body changes. By the way, your blood here. Lizu looked around at the green liquid hanging on the wall. Inject it for me. Samuel Stern refused stubbornly. Scientific research is more important than life. To him to some extent, no. Your perfect body should not accept these things that may mutate. It should remain pure. Not injected into me. Injected into it. Lizu already had an ugly gal toy in his hand. Thank you Shideo for the 1000 starting coins reward. Chapter 154 Lizu's Green Servant. What is this? Sten narrowed his eyes and stared at the thing in Lizu's hand. He stretched out his hand, and under Lizu's agreeing eyes, Sten reached out and gently picked up the thing, placed it on his palm and carefully observed it. There was no sign of life, about 100 grams, and when he lowered his head and sniffed hard, he could only smell the cheap smell of plastic. On the contrary, the toy's terrifying appearance was completely ignored by Sten. In front of scientific research, the ugly appearance had no meaning, not to mention that it was just a small plastic toy. This was just a plastic toy, Sten was sure. Toy? Are you crazy? Sten pointed at the thing in his hand in disbelief. Let me inject radioactive blood into the toy. Sten's hand suddenly sank, and the toy suddenly moved. The childlike scream was very strange, and the body quickly grew from a small toy of about 100 grams to the size of a 7 or 8-year-old child. The canine-like protruding mouth opened, and the hideous barbed fangs were arranged unevenly. Wow. It was face to face with Sten, and it screamed, emitting a pungent stench. It was alive. The little monster struggled in Sten's hands, its sharp claws scratching Sten's face, but it didn't hurt Sten just right. Ah. Sten's face suddenly changed, his calf cramped, and his heels softened, and he fell to the ground. He desperately threw the gal out, and used his hands and feet to crawl back. Ouch. He screamed, not noticing the lizard professor sleeping on the ground, and fell hard, face to the ground, with blood pouring from his nose. The thrown gal bounced up on the ground, and it became more excited, after smelling the blood. Ah. 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 Sten used all 4 legs to move on the ground. The creature that looked like a hyena, with its ferocious appearance, finally aroused the fear in Sten's heart. His heartbeat accelerated, and his eyes were full of bloodshot. Horrible. He was terrible. Ahem. What's wrong? Professor Lizard was kicked and beaten by Stern, and finally broke free from the dream. As soon as Professor Lizard opened his eyes, he saw the gal rushing towards him. The scales quickly covered the surface of Professor Lizard's body, and the thick tail slapped Stern who was hiding behind him. Seeing the humanoid lizard in front of him, the Gal did not pounce on Stern, who was bleeding from the nose, but circled around Professor Lizard cautiously like a hyena, looking for the best direction to attack. Roar. The human-shaped lizard roared at the Gal that was rushing towards him. Professor Lizard, who had turned into a monster, had already gone crazy, and the Gal's weak madness could not affect him. Moreover, the thin Gal had no advantage in size, and Professor Lizard would definitely win this confrontation. But the Gal was unwilling to admit defeat and run away with its tail between its legs. Professor Lizard's roar made the Gal, who once shared the earth with humans, open his mouth and respond with a strange sound like a baby crying. David. Lizu clapped his hands lightly. Woo woo. The Gal immediately lowered its head and ran behind Lizu obediently, hiding behind his legs and only sticking its head out, but still roaring at Professor Lizard in dissatisfaction. What the hell is it? Sten struggled to get up. So ugly. The Gal roared. It can understand you guys. Lizu pointed at the Gal. David Delapoulette's your experimental subject. Inject those things into him. What? You want to inject blood full of gamma rays into this monster? Professor Lizard, who had just clashed with the Gal, asked in surprise. The green blood after gamma radiation is full of uncertainty. Maybe they will create an extremely terrifying monster. They know how terrible this thing is. Lizu pulled over a chair and sat down, confirming Professor Lizard's guess. Gal David curled up at Lizu's feet like a puppy, but his red eyes stared at Professor Lizard and Sten. I have a request. I can help you transform it. You just want to create a monster, right? Sten walked in front of Lizu, bent down, and carefully approached the Gal David, and stretched out his finger like calling a puppy. The Gal opened its mouth rudely and almost bit off his finger. Sten was sweating coldly, and temporarily agreed with what Lizu said, that the monster in front of him had an intelligence close to that of humans. I can't guarantee what gamma radiation will turn it into. Sten stood up straight and stared at Lizu seriously. My request is that you cooperate with me in research. As long as we have your perfect blood, we will definitely be able to grasp the key to human evolution. He regarded this as a deal. My blood. It's the blood in your body, belonging to that thing. I didn't expect that there would be a weird way to fuse different blood types together. Professor Carnes's research only accelerated the fusion process of blood and energy, but the way to completely make the blood of two different species accept each other is the truly great medical discovery. Sten praised the blood therapy from God's malice with all his words. Professor Connors, don't you want to join us? Samuel Stern turned around and said to the silent Professor Lizard, this is our ultimate goal, isn't it? Of course, evolution is our ultimate goal. Professor Lizard, who had tasted the sweetness of evolution, did not refuse this tempting invitation. Lizu smiled and looked at Professor Lizard's lizard face, and his eyes made Professor Lizard uncomfortable. Under Lizu's order, the Gal David Delaport was tied up. Two top monster level scientists personally performed this transformation. The needle was inserted into the Gal's body, but a sticky liquid was drawn out. The Gal was wailing, but the people present turned a deaf ear. What is this? It's not a creature on Earth. Why is the body fluid so strange? Stern studied the blood in the needle, ignoring the howling Gal. Don't make my servants angry. If it wants to kill you, I will definitely agree. Lizu put down the soda in his hand. Stern put away the obsession on his face and speeded up. Green blood was quickly poured into the body of the Gal. Samuel Stern also quickly walked out of the laboratory, and together with Lizu and Professor Lizard, he looked at the Gal tied to the iron chair in the laboratory. The skinny and ugly monster was struggling hard. The sharp voice was gradually replaced by violent roars. The underdeveloped slender arms boom, swelled up with the sound of explosions, and were as thick as a person's waist. The iron chair could not bear the weight and force, and was easily torn apart like a piece of paper. Its body was also growing rapidly, until it grew to a shoulder height of 120 centimeters, like a lion. The green smooth skin was like a demon crawling out of hell. Roar. The Gal roared. The first time it got free, it pounced on Samuel Stern. It holds a grudge. Chapter 155 Targeting. The specially reinforced glass window was as fragile as a piece of paper that was easily torn apart under the green claws. David, the Hulk transformed Gal, climbed out easily, and the wall seemed to be non-existent. When the claws flapped, the wind whistled, raging in this narrow space like a typhoon. The wind swirled in balls, blowing the slender and frail Samuel Stern back continuously, and finally staggered and rolled away. When the gals rushed out, they followed the anger and murderous intent in their hearts, and waved their claws. Professor Lizard transformed into a lizard monster at the first moment, and met the gals' attack. The two green guys collided, and the next moment, Professor Lizard was smashed away. The lizard's tail chiseled a 5-meter long strip on the ground like an iron hook. Cough. Professor Lizard kept coughing up blood. He gradually got out of the lizard state. His arms were tucked, and they were completely broken. The bones pushed open the muscles and the laundry scales on the surface of the body, and stabbed out white. Ah. The gal changed its target, and this time he aimed at Lizu. The rage had made it forget its fear of Lizu. The gal exerted force on its hind legs, and its powerful jumping force made it break through the roof in an instant, and then it mashed down like a bomb, from a high position, with dust and large chunks of cement. Lizu retreated half a step, clenched the 5 fingers of his right hand and gently pulled behind his waist, tightening his muscles like a full moon longbow. He took a deep breath. The airflow was prominent, and at the same time, he raised his fist to meet the green monster that fell from the sky. Compared with the huge fist, the thin fist was like an ant raising its provocative arm to an elephant. Boom! Exclamation mark. The airwave exploded. Under this force, Lizu also kept retreating, his heels rubbing against the ground, and he kept moving for 5 meters before he barely stopped. The floor was severely deformed and flipped to both sides with Lizu as the center. Hiss, it hurts. Lizu shook his arm, that was almost broken. Roar. The gal seemed dissatisfied with its own strength. It howled, using all 4 limbs like a hyena, and its claws easily scratched the floor, and rushed towards Lizu like a gust of wind. The sharp claws were raised from low to high, and then cut from high to low. The sharp claws of the gal slashed across the wall, easily cutting deep grooves like a sharp knife cutting tofu. Exclamation mark. It was so sharp that the air was almost cut in half by the claws. The 2 professors lying on the ground had their ears dizzy from the continuous explosions and air shocks. The next moment, the thick black wrapped around Lizu, wrapping him into a ball, a thin and long figure that was 2 meters tall. The pale arm stretched out from the darkness, like a bamboo pole, but it hit the sharp claws of the gal. Boom! Exclamation mark. The black figure swayed slightly, but the gal, who had turned into a Hulk, was thrown by the power and rolled over. Woo woo. Roar. The gal pounced again, but was beaten away again. The power of the Hulk transformed gal is not invincible. It lowered its head and surrounded the meaningless black object like a hyena afraid of a lion, and did not dare to attack rashly. David. The black figure gathered together, revealing Lizu's blood-red eyes. And the terror transmitted from the indescribable thing. The Hulk transformed gal once again experienced the terrifying momentum. Lying on the ground obediently, the green in his eyes disappeared, and he turned into an ugly and skinny gal again. Woo, David shouted, carefully crawling to Lizu's feet and curled up. Is it dawn already? Lizu opened his hands. The wall was broken, and the sunlight outside shone in. He turned the gal David back into a toy. I look forward to your good news, Professor Stern. Professor Samuel Stern climbed up. Let's lure Mr. Green here, and then what? Then it's my business. The Hulk transformed gal is hard to satisfy Lizu, although the group of old friends in Gotham may not be the opponent of the gal at this time. But this is too different from what Lizu had imagined. Humans may be the best screening choice. Lizu left. The lizard professor who fell in the pit had already turned back into a human, with his scales completely fading away. The lizard's super regenerative ability was repairing his injuries. At this time, no one knew what the lizard professor was thinking. Look, Professor Connors, what is this? Samuel Stern excitedly raised his fist that he had been clenching since just now. 2 black lines. More like hair. What is it? Falling from him. You've never seen him like that, right? Samuel Stern said excitedly. His state is the perfect state that is truly close to God, I'm sure. Professor Connors, you found a shortcut for human evolution for me. Stern danced with excitement. Under the Eagle logo, the agents are taking action in full swing. How did the matter go? The one-eyed director sat in his own office, ignoring the red-haired beauty standing in front of the desk, and just stared at the screen on the computer intently. As you can see, I was fired by Mr. Tony Stark. After experiencing the confrontation with Lizu, Tony Stark's mind became more delicate. In a short time, he noticed that the red-haired beauty beside him was abnormal, and he resolutely fired her. Well, the one-eyed director nodded, not interested in talking anymore. But the red-haired beauty was unwilling to end the conversation so simply. Nick, I want to arrest the toy man. When the toy man was mentioned, the one-eyed director finally raised his head and put his only eye on the face, set off by the red hair. I have investigated that he opened a toy store in New York. He injured Clinton and killed many people, so I request to arrest the toy man. He has been very quiet recently. Maybe he is preparing for a bigger terrorist attack. Aren't you a master of strategizing? She asked back. It's not easy to catch him. Just when the atmosphere was about to freeze, he said, wait a little longer. I think the genius Tin Man has received my information and will be able to take action soon. At the same time, in Tony Stark's villa, in a secret laboratory, Iron Man Tony Stark paused the research on the Mark V suit in his hand and looked at the package sent by Nick Fury. In front of him was a wall, a rubber tire, and a toy puppet arm. If that guy's not joking, he must have shown mercy last time. He looked at the information sent by Nick Fury, with detailed confessions and transcripts. They represent the time when these things appeared and what the parties saw with their own eyes. Some of these things have been turned into toys, and some were once toys. If the material of the toys is not limited, the iron suit he is proud of may just be a set of plastic products. Tony Stark walked to the table and picked up the sticky drink on the table. Jarvis, scan these things. Okay, sir. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 156 Hate, Dream Construction, Nightmare Research, Toy Making. In the peaceful days, Lizu never stopped his pace of progress. The proficiency of many abilities is improving with difficulty, but there are more that are not moving, and no longer improving. Training has made it difficult to improve his mastery of his own abilities, until it is completely meaningless. Harley Quinn has also finished her days of carrying a shovel to go out to work, and once again guarded this dispensable toy store, and spent her days leisurely. Why do we open this store? Harley Quinn seemed to have finally thought of a question that she had never cared about. Lizu opened his eyes in his sleep, and he replied, it is convenient for others to come to the door to cause trouble. Then why has no one come? Lizu stood up. Maybe they have already set their sights on this place and are preparing to make some big moves, but looking at the appearance of the two, they seemed indifferent to this. I like it more and more. Harley Quinn held the toy of David the Gal and said excitedly, it must be the best toy. Lizu turned on the TV and turned to the kitchen. The strong smell of blood in the kitchen was pungent. The blood on the ground that had not yet coagulated flowed out of the cabinet and accumulated into a small lake on the floor. Lizu took out a bottle of cold beer from the refrigerator. He pulled the pull ring and walked back to the rocking chair and sat down. What's the matter with the leg in the kitchen? Leg? Oh, bad. Harley Quinn slapped her forehead and stuck out her tongue cutely. I forgot. Last night a man said he would help Fisk pass on a message saying that plan has begun. King Bing. Lizu almost forgot about that boring capitalist. Although King Bing's plan did interest him very much, it was also the main reason why he didn't kill King Bing. King Bing. That man seemed to have said so too. Harley Quinn nodded uncertainly. So, whose leg is that in jeans? The blood smell is too strong. It's that man's. He wants to steal my good friend as a running fee. Harley Quinn gritted her teeth and was very unhappy. He touched Hawkgirl. So I'll let David eat him. She spoke in a calm tone, as if it was an insignificant little thing. Can you wake David up? He needs a snack. Harley Quinn fluttered her long eyelashes. Woo. The next moment, the gal David woke up. Amid Harley Quinn's laughter, a man and a gal rushed to the kitchen. The chat that made the audience shudder finally ended. At this time, the news broadcast was playing on TV. The Green Giant, wearing only shorts, with a super high jumping ability of more than 10 meters, flew and launched a super melee with the military, including armored vehicles, helicopters, rockets, etc. Even if the military tried its best to cover it up, the videos shot by mobile phones and the news still swept the country at the first time. He is so muscular. Harley Quinn held her mouth. Sexy man. Next to Harley Quinn, David licked his mouth contentedly. Don't eat people in front of me. Lizu frowned and kicked David, and the gal David immediately turned into a toy. I'm going out for a while. Lizu put on a suit and pushed open the door. I need someone to accompany me, little pudding, she begged with her lips pouted, pointing at the toys on the ground. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for your patronage. Lizu left with the sound of mechanical electronics sending him off. Woo, the gal David opened his eyes. After the Green Giant fought with the military, only wounds were left on the ground. Stretchers carried away the seriously injured soldiers. They suffered heavy losses in this battle. And a certain green culprit finally arrived at his destination. I'm looking for Professor Samuel Stern. There were 3 people in the agreed cafe. 2 of them sat together, and the other one sat in the corner, and it seemed that they were not together. I'm Samuel Stern sat with a familiar looking man. Who are you? Stern couldn't figure out the other person's identity. Mr. Blue, it's me. The man lowered his voice. Mr. Green. Samuel Stern's eyes lit up, and he introduced, this is Professor Connors. Maybe you know him, so it's your professor. I had the honor to. Mr. Green stretched out his hand, but hesitated. Are you wondering why my arm is intact? Professor Connors asked with a smile. Sorry, no offense, but did your research succeed? Mr. Green thought of that possibility. Haha, Connors smiled gently, it's just that there are some side effects. Professor Connors has been a great help to your transformation this time, Samuel Stern said. Let's leave here first. This is not a place for easy conversation. As he said that, he also glanced at the man in the dark green suit in the corner. There was something in mind. Okay. The man nodded carefully. Under the guidance of the 2 professors, Mr. Green was taken to a not-so-hidden research room. Through the corner window, he could see the green grass outside the window. I want to draw blood first to see how your body is doing. The 2 professors were very anxious. Although Mr. Green was a little confused, he forcibly dispelled this doubt when he thought that the other party was Mr. Blue, who had helped him for many years. A large amount of blood was drawn out, and Mr. Green's face changed a little. Please stop. What's wrong? Too much blood has been drawn out. My heartbeat will speed up, he said. When my heartbeat speeds up, I can't control myself and turn into that monster. Don't worry, we are fully prepared. Having said that, Sten slowed down the blood drawing speed. Some time ago, the monster next to Lizu turned into a green guy and almost killed them. Green climbed up his eyes, green blood vessels collapsed on the surface of his body, and he twisted his body like a ferocious dragon. Snap. Just when he was about to turn into a green monster, an injection was injected in time. The green in his eyes gradually disappeared. What is this? Mr. Green asked calmly. Boxian. It can perfectly suppress all kinds of emotions of people. Samuel Stern, who only got this potion temporarily and had no time to check and test it, could only recite the effect of the potion. This is the medicine that can save me. Deprive of all emotions. Without emotions, you can't even be called a person. I have thought about suicide, Professor. Mr. Green said his experience in a calm tone. I swallowed a gun to commit suicide, but that guy spit out the bullet again. I jumped off the building to commit suicide, but that guy would jump higher than the building. Taking poison, electric shock. I tried everything. As long as it can be suppressed, without emotions, the sacrifice is not great. The 2 professors looked at each other. They only had one potion. Whoosh, an anesthetic needle flew and pierced Mr. Green's neck. Then more than 20 fully armed soldiers rushed in. The leading soldier kicked the unconscious man. Carry him away. The situation changed so quickly that the 2 professors didn't even understand what happened. The rifle was pointed at their heads, but they didn't dare to move. Is this thing his? The soldier found the blood of the Hulk collected by Samuel. I have a bad feeling, said Samuel Stern. They had just encountered this situation some time ago. Sure enough, the soldier continued, give me the injection. Chapter 157. The soldiers left with Mr. Green, who was anesthetized and injected with potion, leaving only the officer and 2 professors. This is not in the action plan. Professor Connors looked at the officer angrily. The officer quickly dodged and rushed to Professor Connors, punching him in the chin with an uppercut. The huge green lizard palm blocked the officer's arm first. After the muscular arm with bulging veins and the lizard palm stalemate for a few seconds, it won completely in the next moment. Professor Lizard was punched away! Exclamation mark. Huh. The officer looked a little bad, his cheeks were sunken, and his spirit was much more haggard than before. Sir? A young soldier who was leaving, turned back halfway after hearing the movement. Bang! The gun directly pierced the young soldier's head, and the body fell to the ground. The officer raised the gun and looked at Samuel Stern. Can you help me? The green blood rolled into the body, and the soldier enjoyed the violent and even torn his body into pieces. The power poured in, and kept pouring in. Ha 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 ha. He laughed. The muscles changed rapidly. The more pain, the stronger the body. Ha. Ah. In the laboratory, the soldier's body was changing. After being injected with blood, the first thing to be exposed was the spine on his back, where bone hyperplasia and barbs grew. The first thing to be pierced by the bone spurs was the iron plate behind him. He looks a little strange. Samuel Stern was hesitating whether to stop the blood infusion. He had been injected with super soldier serum before, the one for Captain America. A familiar voice came from the 2 professors. The injured lizard professor turned around and glanced at the familiar green suit. It was indeed Li Zhu. Super soldier serum and gamma ray radiation. Although he can't have the potential and power of the Hulk, he will also be a good monster. Li Zhu stared at the man who was delivered to his door with great satisfaction. The man who was injecting the Hulk's blood had no idea of his situation. Although he is a little worse than the Hulk, a toy with a brain is much more useful than a disobedient toy. Li Zhu watched the birth of the new toy step by step with great satisfaction. He is your target? Professor Lizard was terrified by the man's plan, as if nothing could escape his plan. If you also like watching movies, you might know more. The important characters in this world all look exactly the same as in the movie. Long ago, Li Zhu was sure that he had not entered a certain unpredictable comic universe of Marvel, but a movie universe, including Professor Lizard, the Hulk, and so on. Raw. The soldier Bronsky has fewer and fewer characteristics as a human, but more and more characteristics as a monster. The tough green skin is covered with scales, making it a complete monster. Opening his eyes full of green, the world's most dreaded supervillain Abomination has been born. He stretched out his huge palm, and his fingers suddenly chiseled through the wall. Screaming, as he gently exerted force, the wall was easily torn apart. The little giant, who was 200 centimeters tall, had a back covered with bone spines like daggers, which was far more hideous than a gowl. Ha 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 ha. And laughing wildly, he turned into a monster, but he still had his reason and brain. The powerful pressure made the 2 professors in the distance feel cold, and they even thought that, even if Li Zhu took action, he would not be able to defeat this monster. Ha ha ha. The Abomination stopped laughing wildly, because the man in a suit walked in front of him, and raised his hand to press his abdomen. Ha. Professor Connors and Professor Sten breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. As long as Li Zhu touched the other party, the battle would have come to an end. Little thing. The Abomination raised his foot, and kicked out mercilessly. Boom! Exclamation mark. Li Zhu was kicked away, broke through the wall, and disappeared without a trace. Ha ha ha. The Abomination laughed wildly. That's the power. That's the power. Ha ha ha. If there is such a funny thing, can you share it? The voice came from the front, and the Abomination lowered his head. It was still the little dwarf in the green suit who looked helpless. You are really thick-skinned. The Abomination raised his foot, and kicked him away again. Come on once, and I'll kick you away. Raw ha ha. The hatred laughed wildly, but the familiar feeling came again. If there is such a funny thing, can you share it? The same words, the same position, the same man. Kick again. The man was kicked away, and the next moment, he appeared in the same place again. Infinite loop, endless. His strong body would hardly get tired because of this simple action, but his spirit would. One kick, one kick, one kick. When he got tired, he would switch to fists, elbows, No longer limited to kicking, the hatred began to tear the man in front of him into pieces, pulling the other's legs to tear him into 2 pieces, or simply crushing him into a pulp with one punch. Die. 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 But the next moment, the other party would always stand in front of him intact. Yes. No matter how the hatred tore the man in front of him into pieces, the next moment the man would always stand in front of the hatred without any injury, chatting with the hatred without any pain. All this was like a nightmare. The man seemed to know what Abomination was thinking, and said, "It's just a nightmare. Let me wake up." Abomination roared, "As you wish." Abomination's vision became blurred, and when he opened his eyes again, the whole building had become a ruin due to his destruction, and he was standing in the ruins. In the distance, Professor Lizard, who had turned into a lizard, and Samuel Stern, whose head was injured and dripped with the blood of the Hulk, causing some strange and deformed changes in his brain, were lying in the distance and watching Abomination warily. When touching Abomination, Lizu chose to ingest the nightmare virus with Abomination, so they both had nightmares at the same time. Lizu could easily wander in the dream, but Abomination could not. In the nightmare, Abomination kicked Professor Lizard away, and the collapse of the building also caused Professor Stern's brain to bleed, and some of the spilled green blood flowed into Professor Stern's wound. Awake. The same voice, the same position. Abomination lowered his head, and the man was standing in front of him. "Aren't you dreaming now?" Abomination asked with a grin. "Yes, you woke up. Then you're unlucky." Abomination raised his arms above his head, clasped his fingers, and chopped down like a battle axe. When he slammed his arms down, the whistling wind swept up the dust, making it impossible to open your eyes. Squeak. The Abomination toy doll with its fingers clasped together fell to the ground. As Lizu stepped lightly, the air was squeezed out, and it made a sound like a screaming chicken. "I just said you woke up, but I didn't say your nightmare is over." Lizu bent down, picked up Abomination, and put it in his pocket. Chapter 158 Black Widow. Professor Lizard dragged Professor Samuel Stern, whose head was constantly expanding, and climbed over the crooked broken wall ruins, and came to Lizu with difficulty. The scales fell off, and he turned back into an ordinary human, and collapsed to the ground. Just as the Abomination was having a nightmare and smashing wildly, Professor Lizard took all his strength to carry the injured Professor Stern. Professor Stern is afraid. Professor Lizard looked at the head that was constantly expanding with worry. It was inflating rapidly like an inflatable balloon, and could explode at any time. Lizu bent down, and was about to press on Samuel Stern's constantly expanding head, but Professor Lizard took the lead in reaching out to stop him, and grabbed Lizu's wrist. "He has gamma radiation on his body, which may have an unpredictable effect on your blood," Professor Lizard persuaded, and slowly pulled Lizu's hand away. Lizu stared at Professor Lizard's weak face with his eyes and smiled. "Of course, it's better to leave him to you professionals." Fragmentary footsteps came from a distance. The leader was a woman wearing a white coat, glasses, and red hair tied into a ponytail. The wind blew up a corner of her coat. When the wind stopped, several male students followed behind her. "Professor, what happened to Professor Stern?" She ran over with a panicked look on her face. "He's in a very bad condition now. You guys, go put on protective clothing." Professor Lizard directed the students to carry Professor Stern, whose head was swollen, away on a stretcher. Only Lizu, Professor Lizard, and the red-haired female student were left in the ruins. "What happened here? Was it an earthquake?" she asked. "No, it was just a little experimental accident." Professor Lizard stared at Lizu's face, but Lizu's eyes were on the face of the red-haired female student from beginning to end. A very unfamiliar face. The figure, appearance, and so on were all different from the woman he remembered. If it was the movie universe, did he guess wrong? "Professor, it seems that our cooperation is coming to an end. I hope Professor Stern is okay." Lizu walked out of the ruins and said, "God will bless him." Professor Lizard nodded seriously. Until Lizu completely left, his figure disappeared in the distance. "He left so easily?" The red-haired female student frowned. "Has he discovered something?" She pressed her right hand against her ear, and there was an invisible communicator behind her ear. "Nick, I may have been discovered. How are they preparing? So soon?" On the other side, sitting in the office looking at the computer screen, the one-eyed director Nick Fury, who thought he was in control of the overall situation, said seriously, if the military hadn't suddenly launched an action, this would have been a good opportunity to capture him. Follow him, find a way to entangle him, lead him into a trap. If the information given by Professor Connors is correct, our people are already taking action, and it takes time. Yes. The female student nodded and put down her right hand. She turned to the tired Professor Lizard and said, thank you for your cooperation, Professor Connors. I'm not as noble as you think, but I don't want to become someone else's toy. Criminals like him who play with others at will and imprison their bodies and souls will definitely be brought to justice by us. I wish you success. Professor Lizard turned sideways, with scales and fatigue remaining on half of his face. The female student's face stayed on that half of the face for a moment, and she also noticed the change in Professor Lizard's expression. Sorry, she realized her impolite behavior. Professor Lizard left quickly. The female student sorted out her clothes and followed her memory to the intersection, where Lizu turned. An earthquake had just occurred nearby, and a military helicopter appeared, causing a large number of pedestrians to gather near the intersection. I lost him. Tell me his location. She leaned against the wall and whispered as naturally as possible. We couldn't put a tracker on him, and the ambushed people didn't see him come out. The voice in the communication device also felt inexplicable. How could a person evaporate and disappear out of thin air? Who did you lose? A voice suddenly came from behind her. The female student was startled and naturally tossed her hair and put on a nervous expression. She said to Lizu, who suddenly appeared behind her with a smile, Sir, Professor Connors asked me to find you. You left something behind. She reached into the large white coat, and under the cover of the white coat, a small pistol was waiting to be unboxed. Natasha, don't act rashly. The voice in the communicator warned her, your mission is just to delay him, don't act on your own and ruin the plan. She paused, but the current situation was not easy to deal with. Did I forget to take something? Lizu searched his pockets and said angrily, oh no, I seem to have forgotten to take the money, a brand new US dollar. Maybe I lost it with Professor Connors. Yes, this is it. The female student gave up taking the gun and stretched out her fingers to pick up a brand new bill from her side pocket. Thank you so much. Lizu took the banknotes with some questions and invited, would you like to have a drink together? You have helped a lot, and this is all the money I have left. His mind is unpredictable. He may have doubted your identity. Nick Fury's voice continued, pull him into a trap, and then act quickly. The female student smiled at Lizu. How could I refuse an invitation from a gentleman? But this may delay you a lot of time. I never mind wasting time on things that interest me. On the rooftop, Hawkeye, who had long recovered, held a bow and looked at the two people below. I apply to cancel this operation. He reported to his superiors. Reason, Agent. Natasha has been exposed, and the toy man is a very dangerous guy. She is very dangerous at such a close distance. She is buying time for our operation, and the operation continues. Yes. Hawkeye gritted his teeth and agreed. He pursed his lips and stared at the guy downstairs. This operation must not allow mistakes. There happened to be a coffee shop at the end of the street. The two sat on rattan chairs under the parasols on the street and watched people coming and going quietly. Natasha lifted her hair and looked at the gentle Asian man in a dark green suit in front of her. With your ability, you can contribute to the country. Why do you choose this path? When Lizu said that he really missed something, Natasha knew that she had been exposed. She simply stopped hiding and took off her high-tech disguise to reveal her original appearance. Lizu was not surprised at this face at all. This was the Black Widow he knew. Rules and order are just shackles imposed by humans on themselves. Lizu pointed to the sky. Freedom is my fundamental purpose. So you go rob a bank? I don't have time to learn how to do business. Besides, capitalists suck the blood of workers, and I suck the blood of capitalists. Isn't it fair? Like Tony Stark said, you like to distort people's ideas. I just think from the perspective of the majority, not the minority. Lizu never picked up the coffee cup from beginning to end. What are you going to do after you catch me? Lizu suddenly asked. Thank you book friend 20170126133814384 for the 500 starting coins reward. Chapter 159 Toy Store War. Warm afternoon sun, hot coffee, and girls in cool clothes walking on the street. A man in a dark green suit and a beautiful female student in a white coat sat together and shared the afternoon. It was a warm and romantic time, and people passing by turned their heads to look at the two of them. Catch me for a search. Slice? Lizu said to himself, if you want to draw blood, there is no need to mobilize a large number of people. I will cooperate very well. He paused, and an uncontrollable laugh came out of his throat. Haha. He suppressed it again. Lizu covered his mouth. Sorry, I don't want to laugh, but sometimes the brain is out of control. It will also be very happy for you to study it. His expression became wonderful. The charming eyes under the red hair were puzzled. Obviously, it was not the first time she heard the name it. If you can gain a little knowledge of it, the price is just to draw my blood. I think it would like you to draw more, including slices. Who is it? It's a nickname. You can't take the words of a mental patient seriously, right, miss? Lizu asked with a smile. She was choked by these words. We want to catch you, not only because of your ability, but also because you may have suffered mental trauma. We can help you. Now you just need to surrender. As she was speaking, the voice of her companion came from the communicator. The operation has begun. The cleanup will be completed in 10 minutes, and the arrest will begin in 15 minutes. 15 more minutes? Lizu suddenly asked. Natasha was stunned. Not only her, but also Hawkeye on the roof and even the one-eyed director Nick Fury sitting in the headquarters were shocked by Lizu's sudden question. This means that their secret communication was directly exposed to Lizu from the beginning. At this point, they can only be glad that they didn't say too much and expose the details of the plan. Don't be surprised, it's not just you. I can also hear that there are 8 armed agents hiding behind a wall. By the way, can the lady near the door stop swallowing? I'm not a scary person. In the coffee shop, the female agent who had been ambushed early widened her eyes when she heard this. She did swallow quietly, but even her companions didn't hear the sound. If you look down from the sky, you can use infrared scanning to find that there are more than 40 people forming a circle around Lizu and Natasha. What should we do now? This question was quickly transmitted in the agent's communication devices. Boom! Exclamation mark. A reflective figure in the sky fell straight down and half knelt in front of Lizu and Natasha. The hot airwave spread out with it as a center. The coquettish Iron Man appeared. Oh, you are the partner of this operation? The iron mask popped open, revealing the face of Tony Stark. Natalie? I didn't expect you to be an agent. Iron Man's forced arrival broke the relatively peaceful atmosphere. It's Natasha. I thought you would attack by surprise. Natasha quickly left her position and distanced herself from Lizu. The horn of war was sounded. The door of the coffee shop was pushed open, and a small team of agents rushed out with guns, pointing the guns at Lizu's head. On the street, a beautiful woman in cool clothes stopped and took out a pistol. The passing car stopped, and the fully armed agents quickly rushed out. The windows upstairs opened, and guns were poked out. The whole street was full of preparations by SHIELD agents. They were only here to capture Lizu. Lizu sat leisurely on a chair, not realizing that he was surrounded. He slowly raised his hands. I just have a little trick, but I can't avoid so many bullets. His hands were empty just now, but now there was a colorful castle. Are you finally going to show off your toy tricks? Iron Man mocked and blasted the castle with his palm, sending it flying into the sky and smashing it to pieces. Plastic was flying all over the sky. Lizu stood up suddenly and rushed into the coffee shop. Oh no, get out of the way. The next moment, boom. A huge brick fell down. Boom, boom, boom. The shattered castle turned back to its original form and completely turned into broken bricks and stones, instantly covering the entire street. In the toy store, Harley Quinn held a popsicle in her mouth, lying on Lizu's rocking chair, and crossed her legs proudly. HMM la la la, she was humming the TV commercials vaguely, which was a bit brainwashing. Welcome, welcome. A mechanical welcome voice suddenly came, and a man wearing sunglasses and a suit walked in. He was followed by 2 men in suits. As soon as they entered the door, they began to load the toys on the shelf. What are you doing? Harley Quinn jumped up from the rocking chair. She quickly hugged the Hawk Gerald toy placed in a conspicuous position, but she couldn't stop the Gowl toys from being put into the bag. We buy these toys. The man with a short hand took out a thick stack of banknotes and slapped it on the counter. We don't sell these toys. Harley Quinn reached out to grab it, but with her small body, she was easily knocked away. Ouch. She fell to the ground. She stamped her feet and gritted her teeth in anger. David, extra food. Accompanied by a cry like a child, a thin figure rushed out of the kitchen. The grey skin was hairless, like a human, but it looked more like a hairless hyena, with canine teeth interlaced. What is this? The appearance of the Gowl David instantly made the three people uneasy. The leading man seemed to be prepared. He pulled out a gun from his arms and aimed at the Gowl. Bang, bang, bang. He quickly fired 3 shots, hitting the Gowl's body. David was enraged by the pain. The sharp scream was replaced by a rough roar. Roar. The Gowl David slammed his arms to the ground. The blood vessels on the thin body surface squirmed, and the muscles bulged rapidly. The sound of bones deforming could be heard. Ah. In the blink of an eye, the Gowl, which was as thin as a child, turned into a lion, with grey-green skin wrapped in strong muscles, and green eyes full of murderous intent. Quick, take these toys away. The leading man shot at David again, and the bullet was bounced off the grey-green skin. David pounced forward, waving his claws forward, and the man was cut in half in an instant. David, take the toys back. The Joker girl rubbed her butt and stood up, shouting to the Gowl David. Ah. David rushed out of the door, and his huge body tore the door to pieces. Puff, from the rooftop in the distance, a rocket came flying, and hit David's head. Boom. The heat wave smashed the windows of the toy store, and shattered all the glass on the shelves. Ouch. Harley Quinn was pushed by the heat wave, and fell to the ground again. Looking at the mess of the toy store, she rubbed her head. This is bad. He will definitely be angry. The battle outside the door continued. David ignored the bullets and even resisted the rocket launcher. Capture. A rope with electricity suddenly fell from the sky, and David was trapped by the rope on his front feet and howled. Then it was his hind legs. More than a dozen ropes with high voltage electricity instantly pressed David to the ground. It was still struggling, and the ground had deformed. The asphalt road at the intersection was about to be lifted up by it. Ah. Ah. No, this thing can't hold on. Hearing the shouts outside, Harley Quinn looked out and found that there were at least 40 or 50 people bombing the Gowl David with sound waves, electricity, rocket launchers, anesthetic gas, etc. Although the powerful Gowl was not injured, the continuous bombing had a great impact on it. It began to shake. Oh no, I have to run. Harley Quinn looked at the Hawk Gerald toy in her arms. Now she can only rely on this, but how can she wake Hawk Gerald up? Chapter 160 Monsters Rampant. When the Hulk-like Gowl was attacked and got into a tough fight, the agent carrying a bag full of toys rushed back to the car quickly. Report. The things have been obtained. The car started, and the buzzing sound of the engine barely made people relax a little. The agent wearing sunglasses looked through the rearview mirror, watching the green monster roaring like a lion, watching his companions being cut in half by the claws, or torn in half, or smashed into meat. He must complete the task as soon as possible. Sent to Area 3 immediately. The superior's order also came when the engine sounded. Yes, the agent followed the order, and the car accelerated instantly under his driving, flying out like an arrow. The toy store was built in a downtown area. Even if preparations were made before the operation, the evacuation of personnel was still not complete, and people a few blocks away did not know what happened. When the car crossed the battle street, the boy holding the hamburger was still looking at it blankly. Boom, boom. The heart was a little out of control, and there was an unknown fear spreading. Following the instructions of his heartbeat, the agent determined the source of his fear. The bag of toys he stuffed into the backseat filled the entire backseat. No. He suddenly realized something was wrong. The bag wasn't this big before. The bag got bigger, as if it was expanded by the things inside. Before he finished speaking, with the sound of the bag tearing, the car rumbled over, and after the sudden brake and tail swing, the car exploded uncontrollably. Squeak. Ah. The shrill and strange screams came out from the flames of the explosion. Boom. Plop. Several corpses of gals roasted by the explosion fell to the ground. All the gal toys woke up! Exclamation mark. 5 or 600 gal monsters occupying the entire street roared angrily in the steel jungle. The sound of car braking, rear end collision, insults, screams of fear, the discussion of the busybodies, the strange screams, and the sound of cameras clicking. In this moment of traffic paralysis, the crowded streets made everything worse and noisier. Roar. Not far away, David, the Hulk-like gal, roared. He heard the sound of his companion waking up. The gals, like a group of hunting hyenas, all raised their heads and roared. The mobile phone successfully captured this scene. They climbed over the rear-end car, knocked away the crowd, and rushed back to the blocked block. A dozen agents who were armed with live ammunition and responsible for blocking the battle block looked at the surging tide of gals and took a deep breath. Shoot. They could only put their hopes on bullets, hoping that high-tech weapons could solve this group of ugly and terrifying monsters. A row of bullets swept across, and more than a dozen gals fell to the ground. They are not like that green big guy. They are not invulnerable to swords and guns. The agents raised their guns excitedly, and they had the confidence of victory. The gal tide suddenly separated, lying on the wall like a gecko, breaking the glass, and rushing into ordinary people's homes. The screaming person was thrown out of the window by the gal. The person thrown out of the window was getting closer and closer to the battle area, and the sound of boom boom kept coming from the buildings on both sides. They are getting closer and closer, until the glass of the building opposite the toy store was broken, and the broken glass shards were like flowers scattered by the sky, pouring all over the agents. Suddenly, the world was quiet. The agents took a deep breath. The agents who were restraining the Hulk gal David also stopped and stood in a circle with their backs to each other. The high-rise buildings on both sides that surrounded the streets and countless windows could jump out at any time. The suppressed gal David roared. This is a signal. Crash, crash, crash. The windows were broken and hundreds of gals swarmed out. A dozen agents were drowned by the tide of gals in an instant. The uninvited guests who broke into the toy store were all killed. They are all awake. Haha. Harley Quinn climbed the window and looked outside, clapping excitedly. Flutter, flutter. The crazy laughing Hawk girl has woken up and stretched her wings. You're awake. Harley Quinn looked at Hawk Girl who had just woken up, excitedly rushed over to hug her, and said, "Let's go find little pudding." Although Hawk Girl's muddled brain had become slightly clearer due to the fear of the aura emitted by Lizu, she seemed to still be losing her language function. Let's go. The next moment, Hawk Girl carried Harley Quinn on her back, tore the already broken window to pieces, and spread her snow-white wings to soar into the sky. In the sky, without the obstruction of tall buildings, the sun shone on Hawk Girl and Harley Quinn's faces. Her face, which was painted with thick paint, showed a smile of enjoyment. Finally, it's a little more interesting. Below, the current on the rope that bound the gal David was exhausted, and the gals climbed up the rope, biting and pulling, and finally bit off the rope on David. Roar. David raised his head and roared. Regaining his freedom, he was very excited and angry at this time. The roar also shattered a few remaining pieces of glass on the window. The gals looked up at David, lowered their heads, and placed their arms on the ground, kneeling down to worship the powerful green gal king. Haha. Harley Quinn lay on Hawk Girl's back, smiling at the strange scene below. Hawk Girl landed and circled beside David. Harley Quinn clapped her hands. Come on, David, I'm catching up. Woo. David whined, turned back and roared, then stretched out his 4 strong legs to chase the flying Harley Quinn and the other 2. Its jumping ability can reach the height of Hawk Girl's wings, but it falls down again. After reaching the height, it bounces on the ground and catches up again. The gals followed David closely, sweeping the streets all the way. I'll interrupt with an important news. Bang. The strong man waved his fist in front of the sandbag. He was listening to the radio news on the radio that was almost obsolete in this era. A large number of monsters have flooded the streets of New York, causing huge losses of property and life. Bang, bang bang. His fist still hit the sandbags rhythmically, but his breathing was a little faster. I thought you wouldn't come. He suddenly stopped swinging his fists. Things are a little beyond expectations, Captain. The man standing at the door said, "We may have caused a big trouble this time. So, my old bones are still useful?" He took off all his suits and turned to look at the man standing at the door. One-eyed director Nick Fury put his hands behind his back and nodded. "That's right, Captain Rogers." Professor Lizard returned to his laboratory. "I hope they are really capable." He was still afraid of his actions. Between Lizu and SHIELD, he chose to believe in SHIELD, which has many superheroes and high-tech weapons. However, Lizu, who has endless means, made him feel that things are not that simple. The phone rang, and Professor Lizard answered the phone hesitantly. "Turn on the TV, Professor." It was his student. Professor Lizard turned on the TV, and the helicopter was broadcasting live. The huge green monster below was running, and behind it was a grey torrent. Damn it, I shouldn't have believed them. Professor Lizard stood up angrily. Lizard scales instantly covered his body, and the thick lizard tail swept over, and the sofa was easily thrown away by the tail. If Lizu defeated this group of superheroes, given his personality, he would definitely find trouble for himself. Definitely. Thank you Zioaozifenshin for the 1000 starting coins reward, and the 500 starting coins reward. Chapter 161 Shield. At the same time, a manor that Lizu had visited. Office. "Mr. Osborn, what do you want?" Jinbing smiled at the businessman in front of him. "They are all businessmen, entangled because of interests. Although you failed to help me find Professor Knorson to borrow the formula, I agree to cooperate with you." Fisk. Norman Osborn gritted his teeth. "Help me get rid of those directors who are in the way." "I'm a serious businessman." When Norman Osborn's expression was about to change, Jinbing said again, "But Mr. Lincoln certainly doesn't mind helping you." The figure who has always been standing in the shadow behind Jinbing laughed ho ho. Norman Osborn pointed his eyes at the shadow in the dark and nodded. "I can help you, but we are not cooperating." Fisk. Mr. Hardmouth Jinbing didn't care at all. "I also wish your body enhancer a great success in advance. If it succeeds, I will definitely find you to purchase goods." Huh. Norman Osborn snorted coldly and got up and left. Kingpin kept smiling from beginning to end. Except for that difficult madman, he was always in a strategic posture. "Boss, there is some interesting news. It seems that the madman has fought with Iron Man." Norman Osborn was sitting in the car. "Sir, 49th Avenue is not accessible now," the driver reminded. "What's wrong? Didn't we take that route?" "You can look at the internet. It is said that the madman who robbed the bank some time ago fought with superheroes and a group of special forces. And there are also a group of biochemical monsters running on the streets of New York." Boom boom. The footsteps of an earthquake. There is no need for the driver to say more. The monsters that are surging like a tide in the distance are rushing towards them. The target is not them, but under the countless trampling of the monsters, Norman Osborn's car was shattered, the windshield was smashed, and the driver was even trampled to death. Norman hid in the back seat and escaped. The tide that left like a disaster only left a heartfelt sigh for the people who were still alive. Humans are really weak. Iron Man's leg thrusters sprayed flames, and under the stable thrust of the flames in his palms, he was suspended steadily in the air. Just a few minutes ago, he and a large number of SHIELD agents set up this cage to arrest the Toyman. But just now, he knocked the plastic toy castle in the Toyman's hand away, which triggered a terrible disaster like a meteorite falling. The whole street was almost destroyed, and most of the SHIELD agents were injured and lost their combat capability. In the chaos, he couldn't even find where the damn Toyman was. "Jarvis, scan for signs of life." Thermal imaging fully presented the life under the ruins in Iron Man's eyes. He is not a superhero who will be soft-hearted. He's here. Bang, bang. First there was a shout, and then there were sporadic gunshots. "Jarvis, locate." Iron Man quickly turned and landed, and visibility was extremely low in the dust. "It's locked, sir." Under Iron Man's scan, the figure with an injured leg leaned against the wall, raised his gun, and shot forward. But in the scan, there was no life in front of the figure. "Something is wrong." He rushed over and said at the same time, "Jarvis, charge up." The energy in his palm overflowed, and the light cannon shot out at the moment when Iron Man raised his wrist and slammed into the dust where there should be no life. Ouch. With a cry of pain, someone was indeed knocked away. Iron Man came to the fallen figure. What's going on? Toy Man, he is sniping us. The agent held his completely twisted injured leg and gritted his teeth to endure the pain. Unlike the information, he has turned into steel. Steel. Multiple superpowers appeared in one person. The huge force that beat Hawkeye away, turning objects into toys, and even turning himself into steel. That's difficult. The Mark III type, which is in the development stage, does not have lethal weapons, and cannot saw through a person's body, let alone nine. Iron Man held the agent, and flew out of the dust. At this time, the dust completely dissipated, and the agents could see each other, and were rescuing each other. He's here. A shout interrupted Iron Man's thinking. After handing the injured agent to his companion, he flew up quickly. On the ruins, Natasha, the Black Widow, ran on the rocks, and kicked the figure in the green suit with her right leg. The high heels hit her chest, but Lizu just shook his body slightly, and reached out to grab the ankle of the Black Widow. The Black Widow quickly twisted her waist, turned her body, and whipped her left leg on her neck, kicking Lizu. Lizu had to interrupt his movement to grab the ankle of the Black Widow, and the Black Widow quickly pulled back. You are so thin. Why are you so strong? She was still scared. If she was touched by those hands, she would definitely become a toy. I almost became a Barbie in the window. Lizu supported himself on the ground with his arms and slowly climbed up. How are you sure you didn't become a Barbie? Whoosh! A black arrow pierced the air and flew towards Lizu. Hawkeye, who was hiding in the dark, finally determined Lizu's position and pulled the bowstring unceremoniously at this moment. The arrow was too fast. Lizu found it, but couldn't dodge it. Boom! Exclamation mark. The arrow stabbed Lizu's forehead, and his head tilted back. The arrow fell to the ground, and the broken arrowhead was still there. Lizu slowly stood up and turned into Iron Man. It seems that arrows are useless. It's time to use hot weapons in this era, right? Iron Man fired a palm cannon, and the iron made Lizu was like a target, completely catching his move. Lizu was blown away by the palm cannon and fell in the dust. Evacuate quickly. Hawkeye's voice suddenly came from the communicator between Iron Man and Black Widow. What? Hey, you can't be unhappy, because my weapon is more effective than your arrows. In the 21st century, arrows are really out of date, Iron Man teased. Stark. Black Widow raised her arm seriously and pointed to the distance. The tide of gals was coming. I shouldn't have trusted you. Iron Man flew up, looking at the huge number of monsters coming, and cursed angrily. Allowing these monsters to move around in the streets, and seeing the devastation left behind by the monsters, how much impact will this have on people's lives? Roar. The Gal David pounced, and instantly knocked Iron Man away. It roared at Black Widow like a lion. The two sides were only half a meter apart. If they just stretched their heads out, they could take this beautiful head into their mouths. David, eat her. Harley Quinn, who came later, ordered. Her bad character was like this. Gal David bit down without hesitation. Whoosh, the black arrow shot and hit David's green skin, but was bounced off. But the pain also successfully attracted the attention of Gal David. It was only for a moment, and it opened its mouth again to bite Black Widow's head. At the critical moment, a round shield flew over and narrowly blocked the bite of the Gal. Chapter 162. Battle with Iron Man. The shield hit the teeth of the Gal and was bounced away. A man in a strange uniform ran a few steps, jumped up, caught the flying shield, and rolled with Black Widow, avoiding another claw attack from the Gal David. Thank you, Captain. Black Widow knew who the man was. Who is my enemy? The captain looked at the group of gals that had occupied the ruins and surrounded all the shield agents, including them. There was also an Asian man standing on the top of the ruins. The woman with spread wings laughed crazily, floating above his head. Harley Quinn, swinging a yo-yo, leaned against the gal transformed by the Hulk and watched the battle with a smile. Now I know who it is. Let me, an old guy who just woke up, say something discouraging. Our chances of winning are very small. Captain America? The Iron Man who was hit and flew back. His chest suit was torn and sparked, and the iron suit was damaged to the extreme. You are still working at the age of retirement. Are you wearing this suit to perform a sideshow at the welfare home? Iron Man would not say something nice just because the other party is his companion. The order I received seems to be to stop this guy. To say stop is not quite right, Iron Man sneered, implying if some guys hadn't said they were fully confident of the action and started the war without authorization, no battle is certain to be won. Stark. Black Widow retorted. Natalie, you have learned to contradict your superiors. Iron Man teased. Although he didn't like the current situation, he liked the way these people's plans failed. You have already fired me. We can wait until the celebration party to argue, Captain America said. We must win this battle. His eyes under the mask stared at the figure surrounded by the monsters. Follow my orders. No, listen to my orders. Iron Man took the lead and rushed straight to Lizu. You guys' plans are always disappointing. Stark, come back. Black Widow wanted to stop her, but the zombies that rushed over stopped her. Damn it. She kicked the zombies that rushed over and had to get into a fight with the zombies. Captain America rushed forward quickly. He was more physically fit and he ran uphill without slowing down. His solid shield blocked the zombies that were raining down on him. He quickly approached Lizu and followed Iron Man. The two struggled to get through the zombie tide. Finally, Captain America rushed in front of Lizu, raised his fist and punched fiercely. Lizu only slightly turned his eyes to look at Captain America without any reaction. The green giant claw swept over, cutting off the bodies of 4 or 5 zombies and smashed towards Captain America in the viscous body fluids. The captain quickly raised his shield and barely blocked it before the giant claw cut him in half. The shield absorbed the impact and his body only stumbled back a few steps. Ouch. The zombie David locked onto Captain America and pounced on him. David is very vindictive, said Harley Quinn, swinging her yo-yo. Iron Man was already hugged by the zombies, trapped in place and unable to move. The fearless gals kept hitting his armor, and the visibility was zero. Pudding, are we leaving? Iron Man heard the other party talking in the roar. The reinforcement from S.H.I.E.L.D. will be here soon, and before that, we have to evacuate. Well, David, keep working hard to eat these bad guys. Harley Quinn said goodbye. Jarvis, gather energy in your chest and shake off these sticky guys. Yes, Cerberus energy gathered in the chest of the battlesuit, and Iron Man's already damaged battlesuit began to flash with sparks. The blue energy light cannon blasted out, blowing away the group of gals in front of him, and also restored Iron Man's vision. But he could only see that the toy man was lying on the back of the winged woman, rushing into the sky like an arrow. Mobilize energy, Jarvis. I have to catch up with that bastard. Yes, sir. Boom. The flames from his legs pushed Iron Man to break free from the pull of the ground, leaving the ruins of the melee and tearing through the air. The battle turned into a chase between Iron Man and Lizu. Sir, the energy isn't sufficient, Jarvis warned. Speed up, shoot him down before that. Giving up everything, Iron Man caught up with the man flapping his wings in front of him, but Iron Man felt as if the other party had deliberately slowed down. 4,000 meters above the ground, Iron Man barely stopped Lizu, who was riding Hawkgirl. He teased, it seems that the lady carrying you is very unhappy. Ladies are to be loved, not ridden like horses. Do you want to go back to the ground and talk with me, or should I shoot you down? His shoulder armor bounced off, and more than a dozen small jamming bombs were thrown on each side. Although they were only disruptive weapons when facing military weapons, the explosion effect was not low. Are you sure I can beat you? Lizu looked at Iron Man without any hurry. He was no match for Iron Man in the air, and this was indeed the case in the current battle situation. Your powers come from toys. Let me guess what other toys you have. A soldier who was mutated after being injected with gamma ray blood. Even if he listens to you, he has to be able to fly, or a dozen guns, or throw a tire at me. Tony was very proud at the moment. When he acted in the name of Iron Man, only Lizu made him return with a blank. Now it's time to clear his name. You know that my powers come from toys, so have you ever thought about your own fate? That lady with wings can't catch up with me. Iron Man smiled proudly. In the sky, he is the world, and he is sure to win. The proud Iron Man is back again. Have you ever played Lego? Lizu asked back at this time. If you surrender, I may give you a set of Lego in the future in prison, so that you won't be so bored. Iron Man said. Guess, what color is the sky in Lego? As he said that, Lizu opened his hand and pulled it down suddenly. HAA. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 163 Foreign Aid. The huge building blocks were broken up and scattered all over the sky. Don't even think about running. Iron Man quickly caught up with Lizu. Sir, the energy is about to run out. Jarvis, get Mark II ready. Isn't Rod with me? But before that, let's shoot him down first. Iron Man, who was no longer willing to drag it out, immediately launched a crazy attack and fired a small jamming bomb from his shoulder armor. Even if it was just a rocket decoy bomb, it was enough to blow up Hawkgirl and the Iron Man Lizu. The swarming missiles surrounded Lizu at 360 degrees. He reacted very quickly turning the crazy laughing Hawkgirl into a toy, and then putting it away, and turning himself into a toy, and turning into steel. I'm waiting for this from you. Iron Man smiled. As long as the opponent didn't run away, but chose to be beaten, it meant that he had no new tricks. Boom, boom, boom. Clusters of flames surrounded Lizu. Lizu, who had turned into metal, fell rapidly in the black smoke, tore through the black smoke, and headed straight for the ground. Iron Man naturally followed closely behind. Only by trapping the opponent on the ground could the damage be minimized. Sir, 10 guided missiles have not been detonated. What? A balloon flew up shakily. Another, and another. The balloon rose quickly and collided head-on with the unprepared Iron Man. Not good. As soon as the thought came up, the balloon turned into a guided missile. Boom. Boom. The violent explosion enveloped Iron Man, and the shaking took away his remaining consciousness. He fell into a coma. Sir, the energy is exhausted. The report of the AI also flashed with the last trace of blue light, and it was completely lost. Stark Tower. Tony, what did you call me for? Colonel Rhodes had been waiting for more than an hour, but there was no news. He turned on the TV out of boredom, only to find that the city was once again in crisis. Jarvis, help me contact Tony. Rhodes also gained a lot of authority. Sorry, the energy of the Sir's suit is exhausted, and his consciousness is in a coma. Now he needs your help. Jarvis' tone has always been so calm. What? Where is he now? Colonel Rhodes jumped up from the sofa. He couldn't sit still when his friend was in danger. 1,900 meters above the ground, 1,980 meters, 1,970. Don't report. Is there any way to save him? Rhodes was so anxious that he turned around. The Mark II model is ready. Put it on. Rhodes quickly rushed to Tony Stark's laboratory and put on the Mark II Iron Man suit without any hindrance. As the flames pushed forward, Colonel Rhodes flew into the sky. Lizu looked at the falling Iron Man. He cancelled the toy transformation, but Iron Man was more attracted by gravity because of his iron skin. It had already turned into a straight line and fell down. Just when it was about to hit the ground, announcing that there was no Iron Man in this world anymore, a silver white figure flew over and caught Iron Man. Boom! Exclamation mark. Lizu hit the ground, and after being rubberized, he successfully buffered all the force. After bouncing a few times, he stood firm. The silver white Iron Man mask spread open, revealing a black face. Tony, wake up. Damn it. I told you that you shouldn't wear the science suit by yourself. If you handed it over to the military, you wouldn't be in so much trouble now. Colonel Rhodes put down the unconscious Tony Stark, stood up and looked at Lizu. I know you. I know you too, Colonel Lizu said, patting the non-existent dust on his clothes. Just as Colonel Rhodes confronted Lizu, the battle on Captain America's side continued. After Lizu and Iron Man left, with the subsequent forces of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the army joining in, they used bullets to quickly eliminate the number of Gals. Under the thermal weapons of humans, the Gals had no choice but to be slaughtered. Victory was in sight, but the premise was that they had to kill a certain green monster first. Hawkeye also went downstairs early and joined the melee. Roar. The Gal David jumped into the group of soldiers and slapped them. The sharp Gal claws were obviously more lethal than the Hulk's fist. Instantly, only red blood was left to draw a vacuum circle. The slaughter of the ghouls, coupled with the stimulation of gamma rays, made him angry, and even more angry. The result was that his attack became even more violent. The supporting troops were cleared out in an instant. The flies that were harassing him were cleared away, and David turned to Captain America and killed the guy with a shield. Because he was very vengeful. Captain, Black Widow, Hawkeye, and Captain America took the lead and faced the tough guy. Captain America was beaten for a long time. If it weren't for the shield, he would have been smashed into a pulp. The arrows were shot, and the arrows hit the green skin that was tougher than cowhide and bounced off. Black Widow kicked to attack, but her legs were caught. Seeing that the beautiful agent was about to die, a grenade hit David's face. It was Black Widow. Captain, she shouted. Captain America understood, quickly threw out the shield, and pressed the grenade on David's face. Bang! Exclamation mark. The explosion hit David's face and sent him back. His front paws that were holding on to Black Widow naturally loosened. Roar! Roar! David roared, anger having overcome his last bit of reason. Nick, if you don't do something, we'll probably all die here. Black Widow muttered into the communicator. Hulk. There was a roar in the sky. Boom. He slammed his fists into the ground, causing a small earthquake. The Hulk, who was only wearing shorts, hammered his chest like a gorilla and roared at the lion-sized ghoul in front of him. Hulk. Roar. David was not to be outdone. The two green monsters were extremely jealous when they met. David left Captain America behind and pounced on Hulk, using his hind legs to shake the ground. His front paws were like sharp knives, leaving a serious wound on Hulk's abdomen in an instant. Hulk was injured and roared. He held David's head with his left hand and his right fist fell hard, again and again. Exclamation mark. The unprecedented battle between the two monsters stimulated the three people. Go help Tony Stark. They are 3 blocks away, and the situation is not good now. Nick Fury's voice finally reached the ears of the three people. Although I don't like Stark, Hawkeye said, but I still want to say that this green guy reinforcement has a really good butt. He imitated Tony Stark's tone. Hulk rescued them. It also saved the stalemate. The three drove away quickly, leaving the two green monsters to fight. In the sky, a helicopter. Thank you for your generosity, General Ross. In front of Nick Fury was General Ross, who had captured the Hulk who had been injected with Persian and surrendered not long ago. He belongs to the military. If he is a test subject. Nick Fury looked at the clouds below and seemed to be able to see the battle on the street, but after today, he will be a hero. Humph. Chapter 164 Avengers. Colonel Rhodes faced Lee Zu directly, buckled his steel mask, and his eyes lit up instantly. Compared with the unfamiliar weapon system on the Mark II, Colonel Rhodes, as a soldier, believed more in his fists. With the support of the thrusters, he shot at Lee Zu like an arrow. It seems that you don't know me. Lee Zu teased Colonel Rhodes who was rushing over. Iron Man tried desperately to distance himself from him when fighting him because Iron Man knew the terrible power of Lee Zu, but Colonel Rhodes obviously didn't do his homework. Lee Zu stepped to the left and raised his fist to hit the flying Iron Man at the same time, preparing for a head-on confrontation. As Lee Zu guessed, Colonel Rhodes' understanding of Lee Zu was only half understood, but it didn't stop him from punching him. A man wrestling with an iron suit. It's simply a fantasy. Boom. Exclamation mark. But with a muffled sound, the forward momentum of the Mark II was interrupted, and Lee Zu was knocked away, spanning more than 10 meters. The soles of his shoes rubbed against the ground with a squeaking sound, and he stopped his feet when sparks were about to fly. The two men collided, and it was obvious that Lee Zu lost. But this was unusual in the eyes of Colonel Rhodes and everyone who was watching this battle. That was Iron Man's battlesuit. Even if the model was outdated, and the horsepower was slightly inferior to the Mark III, as a top combat weapon, it was easy to break a person's bones with a punch like a rocket. But Lee Zu just stepped back and cried out in pain. Detected that the hand battlesuit has lost contact. The voice of Jarvis in the Mark II came out. Colonel Rhodes raised the fist that had just touched Lee Zu and found that the battlesuit on his right hand had turned into a plastic toy. Colonel Rhodes tightened his nose. Although he found that he could have an advantage in close combat with Lee Su from the previous confrontation, the opponent's ability to turn the battle suit into a toy without anyone noticing was even more dangerous. Colonel Rhodes was very self-aware. Without the Mark II body protection, he could not be Lee Su's opponent. At this time, he also understood what Lee Su said just now. He did not know the man in front of him. It's really not simple. Lee Su still felt a little regretful. The energy output of the chest of the iron suit had a huge impact on his conversion. If not, he would have turned the Mark II into a toy in an instant. You robbed the bank and brought too much trouble to this city. Colonel Rhodes was worthy of being a soldier. He remained calm in the face of danger and even gave himself a reason to defeat Lee Su. There is one thing I don't agree with. It's not me who brought trouble to this city. From the beginning to now, it's not me. Lee Su retorted and closed his eyes. Suddenly closing his eyes during a battle, is it to seek death? What the hell? Colonel Rhodes was surprised. Colonel Rhodes did not dare to attack, for fear that a part of his body would become a toy again. The unconscious friend behind him still needed his protection. The air around Lee Su began to distort, or maybe nothing changed. But in the next breath, Lee Su had a skull cane in his hand. With the support of his cane, he stood more steadily. He was a little tired after fighting for so long. Hey! Colonel Rhodes yelled, encouraging himself to fly up. It was obvious that he was not familiar with the Mark II suit, and he lost the stability of his right hand, so he was wobbling in the sky. When he could barely stabilize himself, he could only shoot crooked palm artillery. Lee Su didn't need to dodge at all, and none of the shots could hit him. The entertainment time is over. You superheroes always like to cause trouble for others. I was just planning to wait for the result quietly. Lee Su took a step and slowly walked towards Colonel Rhodes and the countless artillery fire that passed by. No, he was walking towards the unconscious Tony Stark. Colonel Rhodes naturally discovered Lee Su's intention, and he slowly descended from the air to prevent his friend from getting hurt. Another round of shooting. Lee Su was not hurt at all. On the other hand, Lee Su was about to walk in front of the unconscious Stark. Seeing that his shooting missed and instead blew up the shops on both sides, and that he was also in deep danger, Colonel Rhodes had no choice but to give up long-range attacks and dive towards Lee Su. However, Lee Su did not choose to fight him head-on this time, and dodged. With a click, the mechanism turned, and the skull cane in Lee Su's hand turned into a chain sword, instantly entangled the right leg of the Mark II that passed by him. He exerted force with his arms. A person actually pulled the iron suit. With the abnormal crack sound of Lee Su's body bones, Colonel Rhodes was thrown away and fell to the ground. Boom! Exclamation mark. The whip pulled again. Once again smashed him against the wall. Lee Su's sudden attack made Colonel Rhodes dizzy. Colonel Rhodes aimed at the chainsaw that was entangled with his leg and fired. Bang! The special chainsword could not resist the high temperature of the iron suit, and it burned red and melted. Colonel Rhodes was finally free. Before he could breathe a sigh of relief, Lee Su had already thrown away the abandoned cane in his hand and rushed over with his fists. In order to protect his own safety, Lee Su's body instantly turned into steel and hit him hard. The solid iron fist smashed into the Mark II helmet, causing the helmet protecting Colonel Rhodes' head to collide with sparks and the steel mask to deform. Lee Su reached out and pressed the arc reactor on the chest of the Mark II. Toyization is difficult. Toying a huge energy body will consume too much energy and mental strength. He gave up the transformation, pressed down with 5 fingers, grabbed the reactor, and pulled it out of the chest of the suit with a string of electric sparks. The Mark II suit, which lost its power source, instantly turned off the lights. It also became the strongest iron cage, locking Colonel Rhodes. Rot, you are really lame. Tony Stark has woken up. He struggled to get up. Jarvis. 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 As the electronic signal struggled, the broken iron suit finally echoed. Sir, the energy is less than 1%. The energy is less than 1%. I can't move on. I can't move on. I can't. Gather all the energy. Tony raised his right hand, and the energy gathered. He wanted to fight to the death. The bombardment flew past Lee Su's shoulder. Lee Su walked towards Iron Man. Do you want to become a toy? I don't have that kind of habit. Even at the last moment, he would not easily lose in a verbal battle. The iron suit with exhausted energy trapped Tony Stark. He could only watch Lizu walk in front of him and reach out to grab him. Whoosh! A black arrow streaked through the sky and stabbed Lizu's arm steadily with the strange accuracy of a parabola. Lizu subconsciously retracted his hand to avoid it, and the hand that was grabbing Tony Stark had to stop. Whoosh, 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 3 more arrows in a row, forcing Lizu to retreat quickly and leave Iron Man. Chapter 165 Avengers, continued. The cold weapon saved your life. Hawkeye's voice came from a distance, making Iron Man smack his lips helplessly. What a petty man. Superheroes, why are they so difficult to deal with? Lizu looked at Captain America, Black Widow, and Hawkeye, who were walking from a distance, wounded but determined, with a headache. I thought it was very interesting when I watched the movie, but when I met them, I felt inexplicably disgusted. The indestructible cockroaches, with unreasonable vitality, always make people hate them. Look, it drives our criminal crazy. Stark did not forget to talk nonsense. I strictly follow your plan. I can only hold on here at most. Hey, hey, hey. Don't tell me that you 3 are the opponents of this criminal. Tony's face changed drastically when he found that there was no reinforcement behind him. He had seen Lizu's ability, and his iron suit could hardly affect Lizu. He didn't think the 3 people behind him were Lizu's opponents. An old man from 70 years ago, a woman, and a little archer who shoots arrows in the era of hot weapons. Don't joke. The fighting power is totally different from that of the other party, and for some reason, Iron Man always feels that the other party has some tricks that he has not used yet. That's not necessarily true. Our plan is being implemented perfectly, isn't it? Black Widow held 2 guns in her hands and approached Lizu step by step with cat steps on her toes. You are the most ungentlemanly Asian I have ever seen. She rushed towards Lizu. She fired repeatedly with 2 guns in her hands. Lizu turned into steel and blocked the bullets. Swish. Black Widow suddenly fell down, and a thin disc flew from behind her and cut across Lizu. It was too late to dodge. Lizu subconsciously stretched out his hand to block it, but heard a swoosh. The solid steel arm was cut into most of it, and the remaining half was connected by metal. It was Captain America's shield. Normally, this shield is extraordinary. At this time, it was used to cut Lizu's steel arm, just like an iron knife chopping tofu. Black Widow said at the right time, the toy man should go back to the cupboard. A small team of shield agents rushed out. Lizu, whose wrist was nearly cut off by the shield, looked like a statue. Wait. Hawkeye stopped the agents. Don't go over there, that's not right. He should have a toy. The soldier who was injected with the Hulk's blood in the super soldier serum disappeared. S.H.I.E.L.D. had long guessed that he had become Lizu's private property. If the Hulk suddenly jumped out at this time, the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who rushed out would definitely not be spared. The cost was too high. Lizu lowered his head, bit the shield, and slowly pulled the shield off the steel arm. Hey, 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 I advise you not to move. Iron Man advised, it will break. Lizu suddenly cancelled the toyization. The arm bones were cut off, and as he removed his toyization, his arms instantly became limp, blood flowed wildly, and instantly covered the front shield. I told you, it will break. If you move around. Iron Man wanted to tease. They were afraid of Lizu's ability, because his hands could turn everything into toys. The capture plan all started a few days ago. Iron Man sat together with Nick Fury, Black Widow and others for a rare occasion. We got the information from Professor Connors. Nick Fury looked at the information in his hand. Professor Connors? The professor who was fired by Osborn not long ago? Tony was very interested in the information of his former competitor. He admitted that he had a connection with Toyman, and that he had been turned into a toy by him. He can turn people into toys, and change them back? Tony asked. After seeing Nick Fury nod, his expression was somewhat interesting. He provided the known information about Toyman, including that Toyman had just transformed a monster with blood full of gamma radiation, and that guy looked like him. Nick Fury nodded to Black Widow. The other party controlled the computer, and played a video of the Hulk fighting the army. We can't deal with this guy, Tony said immediately. That's right, but the good news is that he usually turns that monster into a toy, and when it becomes a toy, the toy is just a toy. Nick Fury continued. He opened a toy store, and there is a mysterious woman in the toy store. I think you all know her. The photo on the screen was replaced by a photo of Harley Quinn. She looks a little different from the first time we met. She's not my type, Tony said. Hawkeye nodded decisively. The horror stories about that toy store are of little help to this operation. Let's talk about the specific action plan, Natasha. Nick Fury passed the baton to Black Widow, and she spoke. Mr. Stark, have you created a device that can control toy people? She asked first. Anything he touches will turn into toys, but these things are all in a characteristic solid state, or the molecules of the material are arranged in a relatively stable state. If we make him a pair of handcuffs, so that he cannot perceive clearly. Okay. Black Widow interrupted his drowsy speech. As long as it was knowledge in the scientific field, Playboy's words would not change its hypnotic effect. There is something that can control him, and now we need to catch him. His ability is mainly the ability to turn into toys. We need to act when he goes out and empty his toy store. Black Widow raised two fingers again. We will ambush in advance and clear a street. Of course, the main purpose is to delay him and take the toys far enough away before he notices. Why take them away? Wouldn't it be better to burn them directly? Tony looked at the people present. Okay, you need to study. He could guess how dirty these organizations that claim to protect the people are behind the scenes. He used to be an arms dealer and dealt with these guys. We will dispatch a sufficient number of elite agents, but considering that he can turn people into toys, we will mainly shoot and distract him, and when he is exhausted. I understand. Tony Stark raised his hand. Wait until he has no strength, and then catch him? Before we are sure of his specific threat, this is the safest way. It's like catching a lion, said Agent Phil Coulson on the side. Although he is given such a funny name as Toyman, he is more dangerous than a lion. Tony Stark was more serious than ever. Before he is exhausted, we may have become his collection, Tony said. He looked at Hawkeye's disdainful expression and asked, Baby, do you have any suggestions? I will seal his hands with a bow and arrow. Wow, that's really cool. Tony pretended to be surprised and admired. Huh. I know it's difficult. Nick Fury, who had been silent all the time, finally spoke up. He said, I will apply for an external aid for you. Chapter 166 Surrender. Pa. He spat, and the shield fell to the ground, rolling upside down on the ground, tightly fastened. The shield agents also received the secret order and surrounded Lizu step by step, treating Lizu as a turtle in a jar. Just surrender, Captain America advised. Hawkeye's bow and arrow were aimed at Lizu's head a few steps away. The spiral arrow seemed to be specially prepared to deal with his head turned into steel. It refracted the light and was dazzling. Black Widow, on the other hand, pulled away. It was unknown what backup plan she was preparing. There was not much smile on her face. She was still on guard against Lizu. You can't surrender. Lizu closed his eyes. His breathing was steady, as if he suddenly fell asleep. In front of him, the space twisted, and a crab monster covered with fungi appeared. At first glance, it looks like a crab, but if you look closely, you can see that the shell is not like a crab, but is made of fine and colorful poisonous fungi. On the top is a large colorful mushroom blowing colorful mist. It is usually invisible to the naked eye, and you have to look closely against the light to see it. The sudden appearance of a giant monster as tall as a person once again made the superheroes on the scene nervous. Hulk. There was a roar in the distance, and a green missile streaked through the air and hit hard. Boom! Exclamation mark. The ground shook wildly. The shockwave almost blew people away, and their hair was messed up. The Hulk landed, panting like an angry ape. There were severe scratches on his right chest. Green blood was flowing, and ribs could be seen. He was injured. The Hulk dragged the object behind him and threw it forward, splashing a cloud of dust. It was also a green giant, a Hulk-turned ghoul with broken hands and feet. It had died. The Hulk still won the battle of the green monster. What is this? Captain America has personally experienced the power of the Hulk's transformation into a ghoul, and what kind of monster is the Hulk who can beat him to death? Is he the foreign aid that Nick said? Iron Man pretended to be surprised. Can you guarantee that he is on our side? He looks very angry. Hulk. Hulk. Roar. The Hulk was now a green gorilla, ignoring the chest injury and beating wildly. I surrender. Lizu's voice came, very sensible to the times. The fungus crab also disappeared. Seeing that everyone's eyes, including the Hulk, turned to him, Lizu shrugged. I surrender. Who would want to fight such a green monster? I'm afraid of death. Wise decision. It has been a long time since the battle that swept the entire city. Tony Stark, in a vertical striped suit, with a pink band-aid on his nose and bruises all over his face, walked on the highest tech mobile fortress, the helicarrier of SHIELD. He had a box of Lego bricks tucked under his arm. Black Widow had been waiting for Tony to arrive in front. Follow me, she led the way. Don't you have anything to say when you see your former boss? Tony Stark said in a teasing tone, and we fought side by side, so we have a deep relationship you won't be able to meet for long. He's very dangerous. Black Widow stopped and looked into Tony's eyes. His eyes were very serious. Ha ha ha. Tony was the first to break the solemn atmosphere with laughter. You have locked him up for so long. You didn't get any useful information, did you? Nick shouldn't have let you contact him. Black Widow continued to lead the way. You think too seriously. I can deal with him perfectly. Perfectly. He is my defeated opponent. Tony was very confident. He is very dangerous. Black Widow kept repeating that sentence. The two walked through the long corridor, and there were fewer and fewer people on the road. Only the incandescent lights were very bright. Ha 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 ha. Two Marines passed by the two men, holding down a man in a white coat, who was laughing crazily. The man did not struggle, but just laughed and cried. He looked like a madman, and people could not help but frown. You people here are so friendly, Tony teased, but he felt something was wrong. Could it be that this shield also likes to do human experiments? Black Widow just looked back at him, then turned back to lead the way. After passing through layers of protection, the two stopped in front of a door. The Marine standing at the door saw the document presented by Black Widow, turned around and entered the password to unlock it. Tony Stark greeted them, but the bruised celebrity face of the superhero was useless here. He's in there. I can end this conversation at any time. Black Widow still solemnly instructed. Is he a politician who is good at speaking and eloquent? That's too bad. What I hate most is those politicians. Tony walked into the door without caring, and the door behind him closed. The first thing that caught Tony Stark's eye was the metal-based wall. There was an air conditioner, which provided some cool air. In the center, there was a huge transparent glass, which formed a cylinder. In the cylinder, Lizu, who was wearing a yellow prison uniform and handcuffed, was sitting on the bed with his head down. I don't know what he was thinking about, but he was very quiet. He was like a hamster locked in a glass cage, for everyone to watch. Lizu heard the footsteps, raised his head, and looked at the person who came, then showed a surprised expression, which was a bright smile. Long time no see, Tony. Can you tell me what day it is today? He smiled widely. Wednesday. It seems that you have recovered well. Tony Stark looked at Lizu's arms, which had healed, and only two shallow scars were left in such a short time. I promised you before. Tony put the Lego blocks on the ground. His behavior at this time was more like showing off after winning a battle. Can you bring snacks next time? By the way, I want a TV, so I can watch the news or something. Lizu said, raising his hand. He had a pair of special handcuffs on his hand. That was the masterpiece of Iron Man Tony Stark. It was also a blessing for Iron Man that his toy-like ability could not be used. But looking at his appearance, he was not anxious, even though he could not use it. These people in SHIELD are too inhumane. I don't even have a basic entertainment life. I will go crazy. I'm so sorry, I can't help. Tony was very happy looking at the miserable Lizu. He was played a lot by Lizu at the beginning, and now he was very happy to see the downtrodden Lizu. I hope you like it. Tony Stark knocked on the glass wall. It is said that this thing was originally made by Nick Fury to control a green guy. Your power is not that strong yet. Lizu smiled, neither admitting nor denying. He kicked off his slippers, lay on the bed, and put his hands handcuffed under his head. Why did you come to me? Have you started working for S.H.I.E.L.D.? He tilted his head and looked at Tony. That beautiful lady, Pepper, is she okay? Boom. Tony Stark punched the glass. Don't have your crooked thoughts. He didn't expect Lizu to suddenly mention Pepper. He didn't know what the madman in front of him could do, but it would definitely be bad to be confronted by him. If you dare to touch Pepper, I will never let you go. After you die. Lizu's eyes moved to Tony Stark's glowing chest. I don't have to do anything. Can't I just wait for you to die? He said this as if he was sure to win. Tony Stark's mentality changed a little at this time. This madman seemed to know a lot of things. What do you want to talk to me about? Lizu turned over. I'm very busy. Or do you just want to see how miserable I'm now? To be honest, I'm doing pretty well. I don't have to worry about 3 meals a day. Before Tony Stark could say anything, Lizu grinned. You had a nightmare. Tony's face changed again. It's you who did it. The watch on his wrist suddenly deformed and turned into a piece of armor protecting the back of his hand. A cylinder popped out, and the red dot aimed at Lizu through the glass. It seems that he came prepared to deal with the steel-like toy man. The door at the back opened quickly before Tony Stark's situation got worse. Black Widow said, your visiting time is up, thank you book friend 20200124114321527. Quote, dawn dying flowing years, Jinglang Zhe, Heian Nyanja, hungry sword for each reward of 100 starting coins. And those monthly tickets, the average subscription is also over 100, and it can't be updated anymore. Thank you for your support. Chapter 167 Crazy Talk. Have something to drink, hot coffee. Tony, who was pulled out by Black Widow and sitting in the dining area to rest, raised his head and took the coffee. After staring at the coffee with slight ripples for a long time, he said dully, thank you, can you tell me why you suddenly look for the toy man? She pulled out a chair and sat opposite Tony. I had a nightmare. Tony put down the paper cup and the coffee shook in the paper cup. He didn't look as calm as he did when he first came to the aerospace aircraft carrier. After meeting Lizu, Tony Stark was torn off all his disguises. It was the first time that Black Widow saw him like this. He knows I have a nightmare, he added. Tony Stark, after the battle that day, would have nightmares, and nightmares would never stop. That dream had nothing to do with Lizu, but Tony saw an alien army that could flood the earth. And the people on the entire earth evaporated. Day after day, the content of the dream repeated. Tony no longer thought it was just a coincidental dream. He went around looking for psychologists to do a psychological assessment for himself, but the conclusion he came to was just a judgment that he might suffer from depression. Tony Stark, who was almost driven crazy by nightmares, finally came to SHIELD to communicate with Lizu to find answers. This nightmare happened after their battle began. He is a lunatic. Black Widow stood up and lifted the red hair beside her ear with her right hand. Don't take his words to heart. I still have mission. Sorry. I should go too. I have work to discuss this afternoon. Tony Stark also stood up. He picked up the paper cup and drank it in one breath and took a long breath. Thank you for the coffee. After Tony Stark left, Black Widow came to Nick Fury's office. The one-eyed black man stayed in the office almost every day, unless it was necessary. Did Stark leave? Nick Fury asked. On his mothership, no one's every move could escape his one-eyed eye. Yes, he came to the toy man to ask about dreams. Just now, he almost lost control. Black Widow nodded seriously. The toy man is very dangerous. The observation during this period allowed Black Widow to draw this conclusion, and she continued to confirm it. It will be soon. When the research is finished and the results we want come out, we will have a way. Nick Fury pushed the information on the table to Black Widow. Which one? Black Widow Natasha walked to the desk and glanced at the report on the table. The third one. Nick Fury flicked the table lightly. A double-degree psychiatrist. It's like taking off all your clothes in front of him. I'm really curious, how can he turn people into lunatics just by using words in a few days? Yeah. Nick Fury looked at the computer screen. It played back and forth the video of Lizu and every visiting psychiatrist. He and those doctors listened to Lizu's voice, which was just some harsh crazy talk. It seemed that he was much more sober than some patients in the mental hospital. He's still here? Black Widow picked up the information on the table and asked. They were talking about the Ace Hulk in that battle. Bruce Banner. Bruce Banner didn't want the power of the Hulk to be used, but because of Lizu, he stayed. Seeing that Nick Fury did not answer, she continued to ask, when do you plan to let them meet? Or do you not plan to let them meet at all? Although Lee Zhu was imprisoned on the aerospace aircraft carrier, except for the psychiatrist, only Iron Man was the first real visitor, including Nick Fury. No one wanted to contact him. There seems to be some strange power around him. Black Widow flipped through the information and said, "It's really enviable, but it's a pity that God gave him all these, but he only has a crazy brain. He can turn the substances he touches into toys, including living things, plants, non-living things, water, wind. His physical strength is higher than Captain America, and he has terrifying healing power. I really can't tell that his thin body has such strong power. He has a devilish eloquence, and can make people fall into endless fear. He is as flexible as the world's top gymnasts, and has a 100% accurate shooting skills." Every time she talked about Lee Zhu's information, Black Widow would exclaim, "This information proved that Lee Zhu was a perfect talent, but it was a pity that he was a madman with an unknown origin, unknown goals, and everything unknown." The door was suddenly pushed open. The two were interrupted in their chat. "What's wrong?" Black Widow asked the agent who pushed the door open. Bruce Banner contacted the toy man. It was still the specially made glass cage. Lee Zhu faced the glass and waved at the man who broke in. "I didn't expect you to come to me, Dr. Banner." Bruce Banner relied on his ability to forge documents and walked all the way to Lee Zhu. "We should have no grudges, and we haven't even come into contact." Lee Zhu raised his handcuffed hands, scratched his chin lightly with his index finger, and his eyes rolled around in his eye sockets, thinking, "You want to save me out? I won't save you out." Bruce Banner walked to the glass. "You controlled Professor Samuel Stern and Professor Connors before, right? Through them, let me come to New York, and then..." "Stop, stop, stop." Looking at the Hulk, who was getting more and more emotional, Lee Zhu quickly raised his hand to stop him. The Hulk was angry, and he couldn't hold it at this time. "Then you were captured by the military." "I'm not from the military." "Look, is the military willing to let a talent be locked up here? I look at the non-reflective glass every day. I haven't shaved for a few days, you know. To be honest, I really need a razor. Those octopus-like beards will give people a headache." Lee Zhu talked more and more confused. Bruce Banner knocked on the glass hard to call him back to his senses. "Stop. Persian, you gave it to me, right?" Bruce stared at Lee Zhu. The drug that could suppress emotions was almost his last hope in fighting the Hulk. He didn't want to become a green monster, and he tried to die countless times, but the Hulk in his body didn't allow him to die. If he could use a drug to block all this. "Ah, yes." Lee Zhu nodded calmly. "Do you still want it? I'll give it to you." After he finished speaking, he turned around and lay on the bed to sleep. Just when Bruce Banner was confused, Lee Zhu stood up again, and there were several bottles of potions on the ground in front of him. Lee Zhu bent down to pick up the potion, walked to the flat feeding port, and handed it out. Bruce Banner didn't recover until he got the potion in his hand. Why? He didn't know why Lee Zhu gave him this. Although he wanted Bo Xiang very much and stayed in S.H.I.E.L.D. for this medicine, it was still a bit unexpected that he got the medicine so easily. "You don't want it? Then give it back to me." Lee Zhu stretched out his hand and pretended to ask for it. Bruce Banner was silent for a while before solemnly saying, "Although you are a villain, thank you." He turned around and wanted to leave. The door behind him suddenly opened, and the muzzle of the gun blocked Bruce's retreat. "Nick Fury and Black Widow have arrived." "Doctor, you didn't follow our agreement. Follow your agreement. If I don't come here on my own initiative, you may never let us meet." Bruce Banner changed from talking to roaring. Green burst out in his eyes. He was very angry at this time. Chapter 168 Confusion. If Bruce Banner turned into the Hulk at this time, it would be a huge blow to the military fortress in the sky. "You can't take it." Nick Fury looked at the potion held in Bruce Banner's hand and wanted to say something else. "I said, although I'm a bad guy who was caught." Lee Zhu suddenly spoke, causing the three of them to turn their heads and look at him. "But let him go. He didn't want to become that green monster in the first place. Didn't you force him?" Bruce Banner turned his head in anger and looked at Lee Zhu with some gratitude. The two had never fought and even had no conflict. As a prisoner, Lee Zhu looked much more pleasing than the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent at this time. As for whether Lizu really wanted to help him, or simply wanted to go against S.H.I.E.L.D., it didn't matter what. Bruce Banner would not stand on anyone's side. Natasha, take Dr. Banner away first. Nick Fury chose to compromise. Yes, Natasha put away the gun, persuaded Dr. Banner in a gentle voice, and took him away only after making sure that the anger in his eyes disappeared. If we fight here, it will only make Lizu laugh. The door closed again, and now only Lizu and Nick Fury were left here. Nick Fury had been avoiding meeting Lizu, but because of Dr. Banner's behavior, he had to face Lizu in advance. Even if we are alone, it is difficult for us to create sparks, Lizu said. I would be happier if you kept the beauty just now. Lizu pouted, clearly expressing his dissatisfaction with being in the same space with a man. What do you want? Nick Fury ignored Lizu's words and asked how painful it was when he turned into a green monster. I want to help him. Lizu's pitiful expression seemed to be really thinking about others, but after a few seconds, the worry on his face was swept away and turned into a big smile. Don't you think that the next time I fight with your superheroes, I will have a better chance of winning if there is one less green monster? We will not stand still either. Nick Fury accepted Lizu's answer. From the last duel, it seems that the reason why Lizu surrendered was because of the sudden arrival of the Hulk. Where are you from? Gotham. Nick Fury frowned. He'll check where Gotham is. But it turned out that Gotham does not exist in any known corner of this planet. You are a prisoner now. Tell me everything. You have no choice. Veritaserum, electric current, hypnosis, or just brainwash? Lizu didn't care. He turned and fell to the window. The soft bed wrapped around his body sank and then bounced gently. After humming twice in comfort, Lizu said, ask. I will tell you everything you want to know. Those things are useless to me. Where are you from? Don't make up a place name casually. I need to know the real answer. Gotham. Do you have bad ears? Does blinding one eye affect hearing? Lizu seemed impatient. Being able to walk out of Gotham Insane Asylum alive is like graduating from a prestigious university. A medal for bastards. Your nationality cannot be determined. You will not be protected by any law. You will be deprived of the most basic human rights here. Nick Fury took Lizu's words as a refusal to answer. Snoring. Snoring. Lizu was already lying on the bed, snoring impatiently. Awkward silence. Only the snoring. Even Nick Fury was a little irritated at this time. He even couldn't help but want to shoot Lizu. As soon as this thought came up, Nick Fury quickly woke up. Can you control people's emotions? No. How can people's emotions be controlled? Lizu only opened one eye, like a person who stayed up late and felt sleepy. After a short silence, who are you? Nick Fury asked. Supervillain? Psychopath? Whatever you want to call me. By the way, don't you call me Toyman. Didn't you draw blood? Lizu sat up and scratched his cheek in surprise. His action was awkward because of the handcuffs on his hands. He scratched his cheek with his left hand and hung his right hand on his chest. I haven't figured it out yet. Isn't it enough? Do you want more? He raised his arm to invite. Nick Fury didn't say anything. He was sure that it would be difficult to get useful information from the madman in front of him. Because of Lizu's strong mental influence, interrogation would only continue to destroy the talents in S.H.I.E.L.D. and turn them into madmen. Torture was even more unfeasible. His strong body, that did not belong to humans, was not afraid of those blows and electric currents. This was a person that Nick Fury also found difficult. Where did you get the potion you gave to Dr. Banner? Nick Fury's last question was more like self-destruction. He no longer believed that he could get anything useful from Lizu in a short time. In my dream, Lizu said, I store a lot of things in my dream. In my dream. Dream? The strange ability reminded Nick Fury of strange horror stories or horror comics. You used this method to carry away the money when you robbed the bank before. Yes. Lizu nodded without hesitation. This made Nick Fury hesitate. There was some belief in the madman's words, and some disbelief, and he himself was not sure. There was a long silence afterwards. When the door closed again, only Lizu was left in the glass cage. He yawned. I thought they could have some hardcore methods. Lizu, who was extremely disappointed, fell into a deep sleep. On the other side, Nick Fury, who left the special cell where Lee Su was imprisoned, found Bruce Banner. He had changed into a white coat and was studying the medicine given by Lee Su. Looking at his expression, it seemed that this medicine was what he wanted. "How was the blood test?" Nick Fury asked the SHIELD researcher who was kicked out of the laboratory. Rather than getting information from Lee Su, he was more willing to believe the answer from scientific research. He is a human being. However, under certain circumstances, he will become unlike a human being. "What do you mean?" The researcher pointed his mouth at the Hulk in the laboratory. "Like him, I have detected a set of unknown genetic codes, which will turn him into some kind of monster. If the string of codes can be cracked, humans will evolve, far beyond the current evolution. I don't want to know the future, I just want to know what he is now. As you can see, humans infected by some non-Earth life genes. Really? Non-Earth life?" The strange sound brought Nick Fury back to his senses from his deep thoughts. The stimulating taste of blood. He turned his head and found that the researcher just now was biting his fingers, chewing the flesh clean like eating chicken feet. Except for the blood in his mouth, the white bones of his fingers were clean. Exclamation mark. The researcher also showed a weird smile. "Damn it. Thank you Park Seo Ran Leunian, Juzi Kuan Fengzan, and the man who sheds the sun for the 100 starting coins reward." Chapter 169, New Green Goblin. Control him. Nick Fury gritted his teeth. He thought he could control Lee Su by force, and then study the ability in his blood. Maybe he could know the secret of Lee Su's body, but the current development was beyond his expectations. Immediately, an agent rushed over and pressed the arms of the researcher who was gnawing at him like crazy behind his back, holding him tightly. It can be seen that the researcher who was able to communicate normally a moment ago has now become a lunatic. The state of madness is no different from those psychiatrists. Black Widow was a little worried. She began to wonder if it was a good thing to capture Lee Su. Nick Fury rushed back to the cell where Lee Su was in a rage. The cell door opened, and Lee Su was still lying on the bed. "What did you do?" Nick Fury had never been so angry, and he could hardly restrain himself from showing it on the surface. Yawn. Lee Su stretched, rubbed the corner of his eyes with his right hand, and sat on the bed. "What did you say? What did you do? Use your tricks to deceive people." Lee Su tilted his head strangely. His face was blank, and he had no idea why this one-eyed bald man suddenly went crazy. "Nick, did you guess wrong?" Black Widow, who was following behind him, was a little worried. There have been many strange things recently, and the researcher had never come into contact with Lee Su. He has never come into contact with the toy man, and suddenly going crazy maybe. Black Widow was very worried, fearing that the leader of SHIELD would also be deceived and become a madman. "Oh." Lee Su grinned and said in surprise, "You really studied my blood, right?" Its Nick's eyes turned red. No, it's not me. It's not me." Lee Su waved his hands, but he didn't look like he was explaining, but he was having fun and gloating. "It's not you?" Black Widow asked consciously. She was afraid that Nick Fury would really be affected. Lee Su pointed at his head and said, "When humans face something they cannot understand, something beyond their brain's comprehension, they will either die or go crazy. Since you have obtained my blood, you must have studied it day and night, right? How about it? Is the information in my blood full of temptation?" At this time, Lee Su's voice sounded like a mockery. After saying that, he laughed strangely, and it seemed that he had a weird laughter attack, and he laughed very reluctantly. Before those psychiatric doctors went crazy, they had diagnosed that the toy man's brain seemed to have suffered some trauma, mental frustration, or other brain reasons, which would cause uncontrolled crazy laughter. Under this symptom, his mind was also a little unstable, but he did not lose his mind. "What is hidden in your blood?" Nick Fury tried his best to suppress the irritability in his heart. Lee Su was like a poison. If he touched others, they would die, and if they got close to him, they would go crazy. And if others studied him, they would go crazy and die. But it was precisely because of this that the director of SHIELD gritted his teeth and could not let Lee Su leave. Lee Su's answer surprised the two. God? Is there a message of becoming a god in his blood? Or did he say that he is a god, so that is the blood of a god? Can gods make people crazy? Black Widow said in disbelief. "We have also seen gods, the one from Asgard." Lizu asked back, and then just grinned at the two of them. Thor from Asgard is indeed the god recorded in the mythology book. But after contacting him, it was found that he is more like an alien with advanced technology, but his technology is far ahead of the Earth. Lizu didn't need to ask back. Nick Fury already had an idea. He didn't believe in gods. At least he didn't believe that the visitors from Asgard were gods. Ignorance is the world's greatest gift to mankind. Lizu opened his hands like a fanatic or a bold monk who has seen through the world. But after pretending to be like this, he returned to normal, just like he was imitating a fanatic. Lizu really continued, "That's what those crazy people said. Sometimes I think so too. If we are ignorant, at least our brains won't be so tired. Exploring the unknown is a reason why humans keep progressing," Black Widow said. She didn't want to believe the twisted logic in Lizu's words. Should we give up the opportunity to evolve? Everything humans do is to change themselves, change the planet under their feet, and even affect the entire universe in the future. The reason why humans can keep growing is because they explore the unknown. But the madman in front of him said that ignorance is the greatest gift of the world. "Tell you a story?" Lizu suddenly said. Nick Fury and Black Widow became serious. Stories are his specialty when chatting with psychiatrists during this period. "It seems you don't like to listen." Lizu seemed to have given up telling the story and suddenly said something inexplicable. "Humans live on a small island called Ignorance in the dark ocean. This ocean is vast and contains endless secrets. Now, when you decide to set sail, are you ready to take all mankind with you?" Nick Fury and others left again, and Lizu lay on the bedboard, closing his eyes and trying to fall asleep again. After leaving Lizu, Nick Fury and Black Widow stopped. Black Widow was a little worried. Suspend the research. Maybe he is right. Facing the vast and endless dark ocean, the humans on the isolated island are not ready to set sail now. Nick Fury's expression was gloomy and solemn. Humans are not ready to welcome those things that affect Lizu's bloodline. But compared to the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. who temporarily restrained himself, someone loudly responded to the call from the darkness and the unknown. In Osborn Industries, in the research room that was about to be closed, the furious Mr. Norman Osborn took off his shirt. "This should be mine. The company I founded. My research. He said, but his voice became weaker. "This laboratory is about to be demolished, and the instruments will be sealed. All the research laboratories with artificial exoskeletons outside are pressing in. Those broken iron sheets that are not as good as Tony Stark's iron armor are placed in the company's lobby as if mocking him." Outside the door, an employee carrying a briefcase walked by carefully. The roar had already been heard. The noise was loud, and it suddenly stopped. "What's wrong with Mr. Osborn?" The employee winked at the colleague who came over with coffee. "I don't know what's wrong with him recently. He is very unstable mentally," the employee said. "I saw him in good condition today. Sometimes good, sometimes not. I guess the board of directors decided to stop his research for many years, which was a big blow to him mentally." Alas, the hasty chat ended with a sigh. The discussion outside could not get through the wall, and the roaring Norman Osborn stopped. What a pity. There is only one last step left for human trials. Norman Osborn felt sorry, but quickly became firm, resolute and firm. He was holding a tube of potion, a green potion. "I should also thank Professor Connors. Without his information, my research would not have succeeded so quickly." Putting it into the injection port of the instrument, the green liquid rolled through the glass tube. Norman Osborn picked up the needle, pierced it into the vein in his arm, and the green liquid was injected. "I haven't lost yet." He hasn't lost yet. The green liquid poured into his body, strengthening his body in a very short period of time. Or in other words, his body was alienated. The skin turned green, but it didn't stop there. The body size became larger. It became huge, no less than the Green Giant a few days ago. A pair of bat wings grew on his back. It looked like a green devil crawling out of hell. "Thank you Goo 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 really won't dowry for the 1000 starting coins reward. Thank you Ling 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 for the 2000 starting coins reward. Thank you for the reward." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 170 Loki's Intention. Beauty. That's what I have always wanted. I have always wanted to see those beautiful things with my own eyes and experience for myself everything that the world has never seen before. For this, I can do anything, or I have already paid everything for it. Oh. The voice paused, as if he couldn't help laughing. Do you think you are an artist? No, I'm not an artist, but who can say for sure? Maybe I really am an artist. Your thoughts seem very clear. I can't figure out if you really think so, or are you just acting? The answering voice paused, and then seemed indifferent. That's hard to say, Dr. Lang. I'm telling the truth, but you seem to be only concentrating on writing and drawing in that little notebook. On the SHIELD's aerospace carrier, in the secret guard cell, the young doctor was talking to the toy man across the glass cell, and he also carefully recorded all the contents of the conversation. He was not the first doctor who tried to approach the crazy glass cell. Perhaps the reason he could stand here was not only his 25-year-old age, but also his 3-degree. Capital and youth are always the pride of a person, especially the proud ones. This is a very important record, and don't get it wrong. I'm not here to interrogate you. I believe those guys with guns have interrogated you many times, right? Dr. Lang smiled. His smile was handsome and charming, and compared with Li Zu's suddenly crazy and hideous smile, it was much more comfortable. I just want to talk to you, he said. That's great. I'm going to suffocate here by myself. The toy man looked up and looked away from Dr. Language. Dr. Lang wanted to ask something else, but suddenly paused, stood up and said, "It's a pleasure to talk to you this time, Mr. Toyman." The door behind him opened, and he left. Only the Toyman was left, lying on the bed, muttering to himself, "I really hope my case can help him write a new article. Maybe he can get a 4th degree of something." Dr. Lang left, and the Black Widow, who had been observing this in the mothership, said to Nick Fury beside him, "This high-spirited young doctor probably wants to use the Toyman's illness to create a reputation for himself." The conversation between the two just now was recorded, including their movements and expressions. It was almost the same as the previous psychiatrists who tried to contact Li Zu. Perhaps the only difference was, as Dr. Lang said, he just chatted, without the annoying interrogation tone. Maybe that's why he didn't go crazy suddenly. At least he didn't go crazy. "It seems that the Toyman doesn't reject him," Nick Fury said. "But don't let anyone get close to the Toyman in the near future. There are too many things bothering us. For example, the alien god I know in the glass cell." Li Zu was still sleeping with his eyes closed. He had forgotten how long he had been locked up. If a normal person was locked up for so long, he would definitely go crazy. Fortunately, he is a madman. The door suddenly opened. Li Zu opened his eyes strangely and looked at the door. There was no one. "The machine is broken. S.H.I.E.L.D. will not make such a low-level mistake. Prisoner from Midgard?" The voice suddenly came from beside Li Zu, inside the glass cage. What caught my eye was a pair of simple combat boots and a green cloak. Looking up, it was a handsome and evil face wearing a helmet with two curved horns. "I have heard of your name." The man was right beside Li Zu, taking elegant steps. "You can defeat the power gathered by the people of Midgard. I admire your power. Although this power called S.H.I.E.L.D. is only a small part of it, it doesn't matter to me at all. Be content. Be proud. Submit. I just need a local to lead the way. This is a gift from God." He raised his hand, as if inviting Li Zu, but also arrogantly like a king awarding a reward. "Who are you?" Li Zu said impatiently, and lay back on the bed. The man's arrogant smile froze on his face. "Sorry," he said, not getting angry. Instead, he lowered his head and looked down at Li Zu, who was lying on the bed. "I'm the future king of Asgard, the evil god Loki Odinson. I admire your ability. Being locked in this glass cabinet won't show your true talent. Are you really willing to stay here forever?" Li Zu finally opened his eyes and asked, "What do you want me to do?" "I intend to land on this planet, but those superheroes in iron are a bit troublesome. Aren't they also your enemies? Do you want to recruit me?" Li Zu asked. The evil god Loki still said in a proud tone, "My army is ready to go. This planet is about to be occupied, and there is absolutely no possibility of resistance. I just don't want this territory that will soon belong to me to suffer." The humans on this land will also be my subjects in the future. If you can defeat those who intend to resist in advance, it will be good for everyone. No, I'm doing well here. The evil god Loki's smile froze again, but this time he didn't force it. That's a pity. His figure gradually melted until it disappeared. Behind the monitor, the agent who was responsible for monitoring Lee Zoo's actions 24 hours a day lowered his head and his head suddenly paused. I accidentally dozed off just now. Looking at the monitor again, Lee Zoo was still sleeping there. How the agent breathed a sigh of relief. In the glass cage, Lee Zoo rested his head on his arms. The evil god Loki invaded the earth. He was almost isolated from the outside world here, and he didn't know what was happening in the world. It wasn't until the evil god Loki came to his door that he realized that so much time had passed. But it has little to do with me. He turned over and found a comfortable angle to lie on his side. Before I can think of a better way, it's good to hide in this place. It's warm in winter and cool in summer, and there are 3 meals a day, except for dealing with some doctors. He closed his eyes and decided not to ask about the troubles in the outside world. After leaving Lee Zoo's glass prison, the evil god Loki did not stay for too long. He had to act immediately, get the goal this time, open the wormhole to summon his own army of aliens. But among the original candidates, Lee Zoo was one of the best choices, and now he had to change one. Who else can give those superheroes a headache? Loki turned his head and asked. He looked down on those superheroes, but some of the cognition in the universe and the man who gave him the power now made him act carefully. At Loki's side, Hawkeye stood impressively. He rebelled? Exclamation mark. A green demon appeared some time ago, and he was very strong. Hawkeye replied respectfully. Great strength? Can it be stronger than my reckless brother who swings a hammer? Loki sighed. It was obvious that he was not satisfied with the Green Goblin. To attack the Earth, there must be some people who can cause trouble to divert the attention of the superheroes. The only one who caught his eye was the toy man who made a big fuss on the Earth. Forget it, let's attack by force. Get the cosmic cube first. Loki decided not to do any more insignificant actions. Are superheroes really as troublesome as that person said? Thank you JTJ News and Parksy at Warren Leunian for the 100 starting coins reward. Chapter 171 Unexpected Request for Help. New York, noon. A blue light shot straight into the sky. The clouds in the sky dispersed layer by layer. A huge wormhole tore through the space and spread out quickly. The evil god Loki stood upstairs, holding a scepter and laughing triumphantly. The development of things was not as troublesome as the person behind him said. Superheroes are just ordinary earthlings. Even if they are covered with iron sheets, they still cannot change their vulnerable nature. Come on. A huge head suddenly popped out of the huge blue wormhole. After a second or two, the huge monster had completely come out of the wormhole. It was a huge alien creature wearing fine armor, similar to a whale, but with layers of fangs. After that, alien soldiers riding small aircraft flew out like rain, and the number was endless. In the blink of an eye, the sky was occupied by these alien invaders. Pedestrians on the ground only found a blue beam of light going straight to the sky, and then aliens invaded. Some people fled in panic, but some people took out their mobile phones and took 2 photos. Post an article to increase the number of clicks. After all, other people who were not in this city did not mind watching the fun. The scattered raindrops from the sky hit the building and the ground, and it was only then that it could be seen that they were fully armed aliens. One of them raised the alien gun in his hand and pointed it directly at a yellow-haired boy, and the energy beam flashed. Darn, a soft muffled sound. It turned out that a shield blocked the beam attack. The yellow-haired boy looked at the person who suddenly rushed over to block him in surprise. Captain America? The fully armed Captain America smiled and patted the boy on the shoulder. Can you help me evacuate the crowd? Take them back and run. The army will pick them up. Be careful. The boy reminded immediately. Captain America quickly raised his shield, and the beam shooting was blocked again. But his situation was not good either. He only had a shield, but there were dozens of alien soldiers on the opposite side. At this moment, a heat wave suddenly passed over his head. After a bombardment, the armored Iron Man passed over his head. Old people, don't show off. Killing dozens of alien soldiers in an instant was enough for him to be proud of. Captain America just smiled and didn't refute. Tony, go guard against the alien soldiers driving the aircraft. Natasha and I will be responsible for the rescue on the ground. As for Thor, I can temporarily resist the invasion of the wormhole. As soon as the voice of Thor came from the headset, there was a rumbling sound in the sky. The figure wearing a red cloak stood high on the roof, and the short-handled iron hammer was spinning rapidly in his hand. The dark clouds were pulled by the spinning, and the wind was strong. Thor raised the hammer, and lightning emerged from the top of the hammer, wrapping the wormhole from bottom to top. Exclamation mark. For a while, all the alien soldiers who dared to show their heads died, burned into charcoal, and fell down with the pull of gravity. But the alien soldiers behind the wormhole continued to come. If Thor paused for a moment, the alien invaders would definitely cover the sky again. Even now, there are 700 or 800 aliens entering the Earth, and there are more than 20 huge monsters like whales. The monster swam in the air as if in water. Moreover, if the monster flicked its tail and hit the building, it would cause a horrific disaster. On the ground, Captain America and Black Widow worked together to quickly kill more than 20 alien soldiers, but they were already exhausted. The monster also found the two of them and opened its huge mouth to swallow them. The huge body dived down, and the waves it created made ordinary people unable to stand steadily. Iron Man's foot engine pushed forward at full speed, but suddenly got into the monster's mouth. With a boom, 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 Iron Man rushed out. The monster fell, setting off an earthquake-like vibration. The body slid forward and finally stopped in front of Black Widow and the others. The two stared, not yet recovered from the shock. Tony, I'm fine. A hole broke out on the back of the huge monster's body, and Iron Man flew out, but his armor was seriously damaged. Fortunately, this place is close enough to Stark Industries Jarvis. As his voice fell, a red light and shadow flew rapidly in the distant sky. Boom, hit beside him. It turned out to be a red cylinder. After landing, the red cylinder quickly transformed into a brand new suit of armor. Tony Stark also quickly left the damaged armor and approached the transformed armor. The power is full, and we can fight again. Iron Man rushed into the sky again. Now he is the only one who can fight in the air. If Hawkeye hadn't betrayed, maybe we would have been better off. Black Widow was sad. Her friend suddenly rebelled and caught her off guard. What caught her off guard was also the alien invasion. From the appearance of Thor to the betrayal of Hawkeye, the seizure of the cosmic cube, and the alien invasion, it only took one night. In order to save people, they were controlled by the alien invaders, and they had not even met the mastermind of all this, the evil god Loki. If only Dr. Banner was here, Captain America said, looking at the huge monster corpse in front of him. The presence of the terrifying green monster would definitely be able to turn the tide. Unfortunately, it is impossible. In a remote village, the TV is urgently reporting the alien invasion of New York. Bruce Banner watched all this calmly, without any idea of action. It's time. He walked into the room, took out a can of medicine from the refrigerator, and put it on his neck. There was no emotion in his eyes. Dr. Banner, who was the only one who was rational, knew that he could control his emotions to prevent the green monster from appearing again. The world did not need the Hulk, so he had to sacrifice his emotions. In the huge mothership that had entered the invisible state in the sky, SHIELD, Lizu once again welcomed a guest. Nick Fury. Aren't you curious about why I came here? Nick Fury looked at Lizu, who looked normal. Although he knew that the other party was sometimes not in his right mind, he still couldn't help asking. There is a wormhole in the sky? Lizu asked back. What do you know? Nick Fury's one eye turned cold. Lizu, who was imprisoned here, could never know what was happening in the outside world, and it was impossible for anyone to communicate with Lizu. Unless his ability to seduce people's hearts not only makes people crazy, but also makes people completely lose themselves like Hawkeye. In other words, someone in SHIELD leaked the secret. After this, all those who may have come into contact with Lizu from last night to today will be re-examined. I guess aliens invaded the Earth and caused serious harm. The superheroes you organized are ready to save the Earth, but Lizu smacked his lips. I'm afraid they can't beat the alien army. We can win. It's just a matter of time. Then why did you come to me? Lizu turned around, lay on the bed, and raised his arm and waved. Let's go. Remember to close the door. Nick Fury did not move, standing there, and continued. The Earth is in danger now. You must help. I'm not a superhero. You have no choice. Nick Fury's tone was cold, as if he had a reason that Lizu couldn't refuse. Nick Fury paused for a while, but suddenly said, you are running away. There is something chasing you. Is it called Cthulhu? Lizu suddenly sat up with a smile on his face. It's still sleeping in Reliant. I help you save the Earth, and then you let me go. Impossible. Nick Fury looked at Lizu and finally let go, and he also breathed a sigh of relief. It's so unfair. Lizu stood up and raised his hands. Untied. Thank you Mo Goofyfan for the reward of 100 starting coins. Chapter 170 to jump down. Lizu agreed very quickly, which was beyond Nick Fury's expectations. He thought that Lizu would make some demands. At least with his temperament, he would definitely say something bad, and Nick Fury even decided to shut up his eloquent mouth so as not to affect the already difficult Avengers. But he didn't expect Lizu to agree so easily. That's why he cared more about the name. Nick Fury was very confused about the name Cthulhu. Those crazy doctors and scholars were also talking about this name, but everyone pronounced it differently. He could only barely piece together a name Cthulhu, and didn't think it was magical. Originally, saying that Cthulhu was chasing Lizu was just his guess, but he didn't expect Lizu to say that Cthulhu was still sleeping. Does this mean that Cthulhu really exists, rather than the ravings of a crazy person? There is another possibility. Lizu may be the same as those crazy scholars and doctors, and they all became a little abnormal because of that Cthulhu. It was only because Lizu's brain was relatively strong that he did not completely turn into a madman. Although he did not turn into a madman, he turned into a weird person with a biased mind. Nick Fury suppressed his speculation in his heart. He did not know why, but after saying the name Cthulhu in front of Lizu, he felt a little panic in his heart, as if he was summoning the terrifying existence among the stars. Why did Lizu decisively agree after hearing that name? Was it because he was afraid that, if he called that name too many times, that thing would wake up from its slumber? After the brain dismissed all this, another idea emerged. Lizu agreed so quickly, just because he wanted to use the name of Cthulhu to play a prank and scare people. And he could also escape from here naturally, as long as he was not in the iron cage. The handcuffs could not trap Lizu for too long. Everyone knew it. If it's the second one, I won't let you have your wish. Nick Fury looked at Lizu, who was escorted out of the glass cell, and thought to himself, I'm afraid it's the first one. There really is one in this world, and even this weirdo doesn't dare to call him by name. He only hoped that it was the second possibility. A toy man couldn't cause much trouble, but if it was the first one, I'm afraid that alien invasions would continue. Lizu was so scared that he didn't dare to mention the name of the existence. How much power does the Earth have to resist? In any case, Lizu was still taken out in the current situation. He had his hands handcuffed and looked back every 3 steps, which seemed like a tourist. Even if there were several guns pointed at his head, he was not moved. The light in front was getting brighter and brighter, and he could see the sky. I want to go to the bathroom. Lizu tilted his head and said to the soldier who was escorting him, I'm going to pee in my pants. Seeing that the soldier ignored him, Lizu shouted to Nick Fury behind him, hey, I want to save the Earth together. Can I go to the bathroom? Facing the gun, he seemed leisurely. Let him go. Nick Fury was not afraid of what Lizu would do at this time. He had a ruthless control over this weirdo, and there was no way he would have the opportunity or leisure to make some preparations. In the toilet, Lizu stood in front of the urinal with 2 guns against his head. Even if he took off his pants to relieve himself, 2 people had to watch him to prevent him from doing anything strange. If he made any unusual movements, he would be shot in the head. This was what Nick Fury told Lizu in front of him. You watch me like this, even when I go to the toilet. Do you want to help me, brother? The 2 soldiers were unmoved. I can't pee anymore if you watch me. Lizu closed his eyes. Wait for me to prepare. After going to the toilet, Lizu, who did not do anything strange, was taken to the deck of the mothership. The air outside is still fresh. I was suffocating in that glass cabinet. There were white clouds above his head and a bustling city under his feet. He was in the sky, the wind was blowing. Even if he was just floating in the air without flying, the strong wind, that was like a knife blowing over 1,000 meters above, made many soldiers unable to stand steadily. The blue light column in the distance shot up into the sky, and the wormhole covered by lightning was very scary. The alien invasion has begun, and the battle is at a critical juncture. We have implanted a micro bomb in your heart. Even if you can turn into steel, the bomb will explode your heart. Nick Fury pointed at his feet. Your range of activities is New York. If you leave here, the bomb will explode. If your heartbeat is not sensed, the bomb will also explode. So after the operation, you must come back. Lizu touched his heart with lingering fear, his face full of grievance. I must have died when my heart stopped beating. If it explodes again, isn't that whipping the corpse? We will leave the sky above New York soon. You should act quickly. Shouldn't this be untied? Lizu raised his hands and motioned the other party to untie the handcuffs. The agents on both sides cast inquiring eyes. Don't worry, I'm afraid of death, Lizu advised. If I dare to touch you, you will definitely blow my head off, right? Nick Fury nodded, not knowing whether he agreed with Lizu's words or allowed the agent to unlock the handcuffs. After a slight click, the handcuffs were unlocked. Finally unlocked, Lizu stretched comfortably. By the way, what do you want me to do? He moved his wrists, as if he was preparing to make a big move and warm up in advance. In 20 minutes, the military will launch a nuclear bomb and prepare to sacrifice this city to eliminate the aliens. Nick Fury stared at Lizu's face quietly and said, I want you to intercept the nuclear bomb. Intercept the nuclear bomb? Lizu suddenly raised his hand, and the muzzle of the gun was also startled and quickly raised to point at his head. He was unmoved and raised his hand to shade his face from the sun. Doesn't that mean I'm going to die? I can't stop it. And Nick Fury looked at the huge wormhole wrapped in lightning in the sky with his one eye. There must be a way to close the wormhole, but if the wormhole is closed and a nuclear bomb is attracted, the sacrifice will be too great. Only you can stop the nuclear bomb. A man who can turn everything into a toy can definitely turn a nuclear bomb into a toy. Although this is also handing a nuclear weapon to a madman like him, which may even cause a greater disaster in the future. But the situation is urgent and action must be taken. Lizu walked towards the edge of the deck, looking at the tiny city under his feet and light clouds passing by. He couldn't help but think of the scene when he was forced to the roof by the old Batman, but he was upstairs at that time, and now he is in the sky. But if he jumped down at that time, he would definitely die, but it might not be the case now. Lizu turned around and leaned back. He was ready to jump down directly and fall into the battlefield. By the way, I gave you a gift. Lizu smiled at Nick Fury. After that, he spread his arms and lay back, and with the pull of gravity, he fell straight down from a height of thousands of meters above the ground. Thank you Parxia or Leunian for the 100 starting coins reward. Chapter 173 Nickname Master. On the mothership, in the toilet that Lizu had used before, there was an inconspicuous green toy next to the toilet. Just a moment ago, the toy's eyes suddenly flashed with light. In just a blink of an eye, it turned into a giant. Alive. The toilet exploded, the urinal was damaged, and he was soaked all over. Toyman. He spoke human words. Completely different from the Hulk who couldn't speak, but he had human wisdom. As he turned around, the green bone sword behind him easily cut through the wall and ceiling. During this time, although he turned into a toy, he was trapped in nightmares day and night. Just as Lizu once said, since he met Lizu, the nightmare would not stop. Toyman. At this time, he didn't know whether it was another nightmare of his own, or he had woken up. Even in a dream, he would kill the Toyman again, no matter if it was the 15,000th time or the 15,001st time. Lizu's behavior of jumping off the mothership directly did not exceed Nick Fury's expectations. The winged woman toy under his command had never been turned out, so it must still be with Lizu. But when Nick Fury heard the gift left by Lizu, he felt uneasy. Lizu was not a person who could suffer a loss, or he never cared whether he suffered a loss or not. He did whatever he wanted and did not care about anything in the world, including his own life. Nick Fury did not have the confidence to threaten him with that bomb. But people are always afraid of death, right? Ordinary people would, but would madmen? He was not sure. Maybe. There was a rumble, and a green figure rushed out. The green giant, with hard scales crawling on his body and bone spurs on his back like swords. Hate. The green monster had just appeared on the scene, and it tore two fighter planes apart as if to vent. When he turned around and saw Nick Fury and others, he rushed over without hesitation. The wind blown by his fist actually smashed the wind blowing from the sky back. The soldier who was once taken away by Lizu and injected with the blood of the Hulk, Nick Fury thought that Lizu would take him with him this time and let Lizu go to the war, which might not be without the intention of letting the Abomination fill the vacancy of the Hulk, but he didn't expect that Lizu would actually leave him on the mothership. In the blink of an eye, many parts of the mothership were smashed. Under the fist of this green monster, the hard iron sheet was just a fragile white paper, which could be torn clean with a wave of his hand. Nick Fury looked at Lizu's almost invisible figure falling from the sky, gritted his teeth, and still did not detonate the bomb. Lizu couldn't die now, at least let him play a role before he died, and the mothership he had operated for many years also suffered heavy losses. These were indisputable facts. At present, he could only strengthen his confidence and believe that Lizu would definitely help the Avengers. In addition, he had to find a way to drive the Abomination out. Nick Fury retracted his gaze and watched the three Special Forces soldiers with guns being smashed away. He didn't know whether they were dead or alive, and his heart felt even heavier. Lizu really left him a big gift, at least enough to give him a headache. Where's Persian? He still had the potion that could suppress emotions, but that thing was considered to have no human rights, depriving people of emotions, and was not applicable. At the moment, suppressing the green monster was the most important thing. Moreover, if they could catch the Abomination, although they lost the Hulk, they gained countless Hulks. But, how to inject the potion into the green monster? Drive him out of the mothership first. At least the mothership must not be destroyed. It was the thing that carried his years of hard work. Nick Fury quickly boarded the plane. Even a monster with human intelligence could not escape the deliberate trap set by S.H.I.E.L.D. But for his own safety, he had to stay away from the New York battlefield. Lizu was falling. He touched his chest and felt his heart beat. Thump, thump, thump. There was still a micro bomb embedded in it, but he could still laugh. The ground was getting closer and closer. On the other side, the battle had entered a stalemate. Iron Man's battle suit was seriously damaged, and the energy was about to be exhausted. The palm fired artillery fire, blasting away the alien soldiers who were driving the aircraft on the left and right. After the alien's body fell, and the aircraft lost control, it immediately fell to the ground, accompanied by two rumbling explosions, blowing the ground troops upside down. After completing an easy blockade, Iron Man rushed to the direction where the battle was tight again, and did not forget to use the communicator to ask about the battle situation. Hey, the hero of the explosive point, how is the situation over there? Who is that? Captain America asked. Captain America and Black Widow's clever partnership, shield blocking and gun shooting are just right, quickly annihilating the alien invaders on the ground. Oh? Captain Popsicle asked. Iron Man smiled and blew up to aircraft, but he was hit on the shoulder by a sudden beam of light, and the armor cracked. The right shoulder is damaged by 80%, the right hand line is damaged, and the contact is lost. Lost contact. The right arm suddenly short-circuited, and the balance was lost. Iron Man tilted and almost fell. The armor at his lower back bounced off, and with the addition of two thrusters spraying flames, he barely balanced his body. This set of armor is about to be scrapped, and the battle in front of him must be resolved as soon as possible, and then replaced with another set. Look at that flowing long hair, can't you guess it? Iron Man still had the mind to joke. The only person with flowing long hair present was Thor. I can control it. Thor's voice of gritting his teeth and insisting was particularly clear. He was already a little overwhelmed. Under the thunder of the wormhole, more and more fish escaped the thunder. The battle did not get better because of their situation. Instead, if it dragged on, it would not only be this city that would be captured, but even this country and even this planet. On the ground, Black Widow quickly ran up, stepped on the captain's shield and jumped up, crossed the broken wall, and popped out like a black snake. Her legs were like snake tongues, quickly searching for the enemy. With just 2 kicks, she half crouched and landed, and the last 2 ambushed aliens in this area were also kicked unconscious. Quickly add 2 more shots. She took a breath and said, "We must close the wormhole first. The double agent is right. We must close the wormhole first. Iron Man is probably most eager to give people nicknames, and saving the Earth is probably second. Everyone has their own mission. Iron Man in charge of the aerial battle, Thor blocking the wormhole, Captain America commanding the battle, or Black Widow in charge of the sneak attack and strangulation. I'll go and close it." Black Widow raised her hand. "Tony, give me a hand." Iron Man flew over her head, grabbed her arm, and pulled her into the sky. When she let go, Black Widow happened to fall on a flying machine. 2 alien soldiers noticed it and raised their guns to fight back, but she kicked them to the ground and they were dead or alive. "Borrow it." Black Widow drove the flying machine and rushed towards the evil god Loki on the roof. No one should underestimate a female superhero. Chapter 174 Anti-Hero 1. Black Widow took off in a flying vehicle, but did not rush to Loki immediately, but circled closer. "I can't do it alone." She knew very well that she might be able to entangle the evil god Loki, but she would never have the spare power to close the wormhole. "Wait, I'll be there soon," Thor replied. His thunder power is not inexhaustible, and the dark clouds are about to withdraw. Now he must use thunder to subdue his playful and prankster brother. But without the restraint of Thor, in just a few seconds, the invaders flying out of the wormhole almost filled the blue sky, and the sky became gloomy. The war affected most of the city, and people naturally could not evacuate at the first time. Subway stations, basements and other places became temporary shelters. Hundreds of people huddled in the basement, listening to the gunshots and roars above their heads, holding their breath, but not daring to move. There was no light here, so it was pitch black. The sound of breathing may be the only proof that everyone is still safe. Soldiers? It was no longer reliable. Human firearms were pale and powerless in front of alien weapons. Perhaps they would have to sacrifice the lives of more than a dozen people to kill 2 or 3 aliens. But alien weapons could easily sweep them away. As time went on and the invasion continued, the human advantage in numbers was about to be lost. "Here they come." A small group of alien soldiers still found this hiding place. The ceiling above their heads was burned through by a red dot, and the red dot quickly drew a circle. In the dark basement, the red light was so eye-catching. Some people's faces were flushed by the red light. Others could no longer suppress their fear and screamed. Finally, the ceiling broke open, and 2 or 3 aliens were about to jump in and start a massacre. However, the 3 aliens who were about to jump shrank violently, turned into toys, and fell from the hole in the basement. Another young face appeared, and he was still smiling. It was a human. Could it be a superhero? "Sorry, I'm bothering you," he apologized to the survivors in the basement. "Can anyone help me throw up the 3 toys that fell?" No one dared to move. This scene was too weird. The fully armed aliens turned into toys in the blink of an eye. But at least they were from Earth. Finally, a brave black man picked up the toys and threw them up. "Thank you," he said politely, and stood up to leave. "Are you a superhero?" A cautious voice came from the basement. His question seemed to be everyone's expectation. The Earth had suffered such a disaster, they always wanted a more powerful superhero, or more superheroes. The other party looked at the 3 toys in his hand, paused for a moment, and then said, "No." This person was naturally Lizu, who fell from the sky. He was lucky and didn't encounter any aliens along the way. Maybe he was still on the periphery of the battle. After leaving the building and just walking to the intersection, the alien monster shaped like a whale had already flown over with its fins. Hundreds of aliens were crawling on its back, and they jumped off at this time. In a moment, they slaughtered the small group of soldiers at the intersection. Lizu, standing on this war-torn street, became their target. "It's so big." Lizu looked up and exclaimed, but he didn't care that he was surrounded. But he still made some movements, holding 2 toys in his hands and gently placing them on the ground. The toys suddenly changed and came to life. "What is this? Do we encounter interesting things every time we go out? It can't be aliens?" Harley Quinn put her hands on her hips and twisted her hips, staring at the aliens for a while. Hawk General stood respectfully beside Lizu, about half a step behind. Is there any here? Lizu suddenly asked. Hehe. Harley Quinn was very proud. Of course there is, but it's not easy to hide. She seemed to have done something incredible. Lizu closed his eyes as if sensing, and then he suddenly opened his eyes. Boom, boom, 2 explosions. The building in front collapsed. The building fell on the huge monster and immediately pressed it to the ground, making it difficult to move. Even the armed alien soldiers were startled by the sudden collapse of the building, and most of them were injured or killed. I was originally going to use it against superheroes, Lizu said with regret, but it was actually used against aliens. He had wanted to spend this invasion war peacefully in S.H.I.E.L.D., but because of his arrival, the world began to become more and more different. Are we going to be superheroes? Harley Quinn was a little excited. It seems that it should be called. Lizu rubbed his chin and thought seriously, anti-hero? He still didn't like the title of hero. In front of him, the surviving aliens had already begun to attack. The 3 of them didn't care about the muzzles of the guns. There were several thunderbolts in the sky, and all the aliens in front of Lizu were destroyed. A short-handled hammer fell with a man in a red robe. The red robe was blown by the wind, and the thunder was shaking with the wind, so domineering. He noticed the eagle girl next to Lizu, a woman with wings. We need your strength now, act quickly. After he said that, the hammer turned quickly in his hand, swung forward, and rushed into the sky. The crazy laughing eagle girl had already spread her wings, eager to try. Let's go. As soon as Lizu finished speaking, 2 female generals rushed out. Hawk Girl spread her wings and flew low, but her speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, she successfully shot down most of the alien soldiers gathered in the sky. On the contrary, Harley Quinn rushed out, but did not fight with the aliens who fell to the ground. This is good. She grabbed the iron baseball bat on the ground and swung it, very satisfied. Bang! She swung the stick on the head of the alien soldier who had lost his gun, and immediately knocked him crooked. She was also excited, stepped on his chest, and smashed the stick violently, as if to whip the corpse. Ha 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 ha. She was still laughing strangely, a complete crazy woman. She didn't care about the alien soldiers approaching, just smashing them by herself. With her wings flapping, the crazy laughing hawk girl flew over, and Harley Quinn was clear. Harley Quinn turned her head strangely, and found that there was no space around her. She smiled and continued to swing the stick to smash. Ha 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 ha. What else can make people happier? Lizu took a quick run, and with a flick of his legs, he actually jumped several meters high. He easily grabbed a flying machine without much effort. He also had the accelerator in his right hand. He felt that this thing was much more useful than the eagle riding girl. He turned sharply and rushed to the giant beast closest to him. When he was about to get close, he abandoned the flying machine and pressed his hands on the beast. In just a moment, a terrifying whale-like beast was instantly turned into a toy. At the same time, hundreds of soldiers climbing on the beast also fell down. It was like a rain of toys. We have reinforcement. Chapter 175 Anti-Hero 2. Iron Man, who was killing the enemy in the air, watched as Lizu raised his hand, and a monster that almost destroyed one of his battle suits was easily turned into a toy. Although he knew it long ago, he was still shocked. And the pride of a hero, letting a villain to help, somewhat damaged his reputation. Why did Nick let him out? He was puzzled, but he said it. The invasion of the Earth is indeed a crisis, but if this dangerous person is released, the world may not be stable after this crisis. He can guess most of Nick Fury's thoughts, but he still doesn't want the Toyman as his reinforcement. Who is it? Captain America's voice. Toyman. There was silence over there. Not only Captain America, but also Black Widow. Only Thor didn't understand what it meant. Now Thor was anxious to fight with his brother, and he didn't have the mind to pay attention to their topic. Iron Man didn't need to say anything more. The crazy laughing Hawk Girl and Harley Quinn, the 2 of them had already killed near Captain America. Captain America said, perhaps Nick has some ideas. Now that the Earth is really invaded, since he is an Earthling, he certainly doesn't want this planet to be occupied by others. Just when several superheroes were about to agree with Captain America's words, an inappropriate voice came. Superheroes are too embarrassing. The voice was very close. Captain America looked up and saw a figure standing on the roof. She had 2 ponytails and an iron baseball bat on her shoulder. She also appeared in the encirclement of the toy people some time ago, and her information was also handed over to Captain America. She is also one of Lizu's toys, a crazy woman, who has no special abilities, but is very tricky. She can always measure her position well, and you can't ignore her as an ordinary shrimp. The toy people called her Harley Quinn. Here it comes. Ha ha ha. So scary. Harley Quinn pointed to the top of her head, very excited, and she didn't look scared at all. There was a loud noise behind him, and buildings were violently smashed, getting closer and closer. Captain, we've dropped a tough guy. Try to lead him to the Toyman. Nick Fury's voice suddenly cut into the channel. Nick sounded exhausted. The signal was extremely unstable, and the situation on his side didn't seem optimistic. Boom, boom, boom. The sound was still approaching. Captain America's heart tightened, and he quickly rushed forward and half crouched to hide behind a car while carrying a shield to block the back. Sure enough, an explosive impact came. The wall tore apart, and a green Bigfoot hit Captain America like a cannonball. He also brought raindrops of gravel, which hit the shield, knocked off the paint, and left white spots. The same body shape and skin as the Hulk, but the joints on the body were covered with green bones like arrows, and the bones on the back were longer like spears. Coincidentally, at this time, a giant beast in the sky discovered the figure of the green monster and rushed down. The shadow covered the street, and the sky seemed to collapse. Humph! The green monster seemed to be disdainful. He jumped up and dunked the giant beast's head with both hands! Exclamation mark. Instantly explosive smash. The body fell to the ground like a meteorite, and 2 or 3 cars were crushed into disgust by the body with painful squeaks. The ground shook, and Captain America, who was squatting on the ground, felt his legs numb. Are you kidding? Captain America looked at the terrifying figure and smiled bitterly. This monster was not something he could deal with. The weapon-like appearance looked more aggressive than the Hulk. He had no confidence. This green monster was not comparable to the lion-like monster, not to mention that such a monster almost took his life. Hey, big guy. The crazy woman's voice made Captain America think to himself, why doesn't she hide? No one dared to guarantee that he would survive under the hands of this crazy green monster. Abomination turned his head and looked at the Harley Quinn above his head. Little bug. He was very disdainful and was too lazy to reach out and crush the little bug. Do you know, David? Harley Quinn didn't care about Abomination's disdain, or it could be said that the expression of a human being could no longer be seen on that ugly green face. The Abomination grabbed the cargo box of a pickup truck and swung his forearm slightly. The pickup truck suddenly turned into a meteor and hit Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn was still immortal after all. She barely escaped by jumping off the building, but she fell on the car, shattering the car window. Her body curled up, obviously seriously injured. She climbed up and pressed her right leg. Seeing the redness and swelling, her right leg was clearly injured. What a lunatic. She dared to call others crazy. The Abomination was angry that he couldn't smash the little bug into a pulp in one go, and raised his foot to kick again. This time Captain America acted quickly, like an arrow ready to be launched, and went straight to Harley Quinn. At the same time, the shield was thrown out, directly grabbing the eyes of the Abomination. The Abomination subconsciously raised his hand to resist, and the bone sword on his arm knocked the shield away, but he also stopped kicking Harley Quinn. Captain America quickly took action and took Harley Quinn away. That kick landed, and the car was kicked into a discus, and the power was terrifying. Since you are also the Hulk, you must be an Earthling. Why don't you protect the Earth? Captain America carried Harley Quinn on his back, unwilling to fight at this critical moment. Do you know where Banner is? Abomination's eyes lit up. Only the Hulk could inspire his fighting spirit. As for these weak aliens, he didn't take them seriously at all. Captain Popsicle, it's cool to be a hero saving a beauty. Iron Man has already rushed over. No matter what, he couldn't watch Abomination smash Captain America into a pulp. Maybe he could lead the green monster to fight against the aliens, which could alleviate their lack of combat power. But this guy has human wisdom, not just an angry beast. Ha 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 ha. The crazy laugh was from the woman with wings. She was a complete lunatic, which could be seen from the broken borders in the sky. The woman carried by Captain America was also a lunatic, and she was more like the madness of a toy man. There was no normal person around that guy. Abomination stretched out his hand in annoyance, trying to swat away the laughing Hawkgirl beside him, but he couldn't catch her. He raised his foot in annoyance, ready to pounce on Captain America and others. "I'll lead him away later." Iron Man gritted his teeth and prepared to force his way in. "You are all here." A frivolous voice suddenly came from a distance, right in front of Iron Man, right next to Abomination's calf. Toyman. He looked like he had just come out of a store, holding 7 or 8 toys in his hands. Whale-like toys. Everyone present knew that it was not an ordinary toy. Toyman. Abomination saw Izu and raised his foot, but did not put it down immediately. "Is this still a nightmare?" Abomination asked. He was afraid of having nightmares, and he was not sure if he was awake now. He was going crazy, or he was already crazy. "You're awake." Izu spread his hands, not caring about the huge sole of his foot covering his head. Abomination didn't dare to put his foot down after all. "Thank you Dream Night Owl for the 100 starting coins reward." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.